Might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash the smash.
And he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, he's literally, all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, where more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis.
Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work.
It's crap. It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. Very much appreciate you joining me. It's 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. This is, of course, Talk, the home of common sense. Someone's got to talk common sense in this country because you're not getting any from the sodding government anymore, are you? Anyway, I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, just in case you were wondering. And if you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, whatever you're doing, it is fabulous to have your company. By the way, if you do miss anything of the show, and I don't think I want to miss a single minute of today's show, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. It's very easy to find because it's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show on YouTube, and you can hit subscribe so you never have to miss a thing. Bearing in mind that YouTube is now the second most watched media in the country. I tried to explain to my 81-year-old father some years ago that YouTube was actually a thing. No, it wasn't, he said. But given that he talks about doing the Google, I think... Hi, Dad. Genuinely, doing the Google. I think we can safely say he's not perhaps the person who's most knowledgeable about this. But anyway, go to the YouTube page and see what we're all about. Meanwhile, shall we talk about the insanity of everything that this Prime Minister does? A Prime Minister who... I put out a video last week because I was off scuba diving and I spotted this jellyfish and I thought, oh, I know who that reminds me of, our Prime Minister. Quite a lot of people got in touch to say, you're being a little bit too cruel to those jellyfish because they've actually got more spine than our Prime Minister. He believes in nothing. Nothing at all. I'll tell you what he definitely doesn't believe in is the idea that we should be on the side of the only democratic state in the whole of the Middle East. Because yesterday, he sided with Hamas. And when the US government and when Prime Minister Netanyahu of Israel criticised the Prime Minister for what he had to say yesterday in basically, rewarding Hamas, they were quite right. When the Prime Minister announced yesterday that, after a cabinet meeting, Britain will be planning to basically recognise a Palestinian state in September ahead of the next UN General Assembly meeting in New York, based on just simple conditions relating only to Israel, with not a single condition on Hamas. Oh yes, they've asked Hamas to release the hostages. That's worked well over the last 2 years, hasn't it? They've asked them to agree to a ceasefire. Well, they just rejected one only the other day. Even Qatar, their big mates, walked away from the negotiating table because the demands from Hamas were so absurd in terms of what Israel was willing to concede. So Israel basically have to provide aid to all the people in Gaza, basically, agree to a ceasefire, which will only be agreed effectively if Hamas also agrees to it, and basically do everything that the Western world says they should do, and every lefty, pro-Palestinian, pro-Gaza, pro-Hamas Labour backbench MP wants. But no requirement on Hamas to do anything at all. The conditions are so absurd that if there were to be a ceasefire and every single hostage was released before September, bizarrely, the incentive would be that there wouldn't be recognition of a Palestinian state. And anyway, what does recognition of a Palestinian state? This is the most meaningless, virtue-singling, pointless gesture politics you could possibly imagine. It will achieve nothing other than basically help Hamas in their propaganda war against Israel, but it won't actually bring about peace. It won't save a single Gazan child's life. It won't save a single Israeli person's life from Hamas attacks. It won't do anything other than appease those who believe that basically people of Palestine are the eternal victims and the people of Israel are the eternal villains. A simplistic, ridiculous, unhistoric, ignorant view of what has been going on in the Middle East for the last, well, goodness me, not just 50, 60, 70, 100,000 years. It is insane for the Prime Minister to do this. It has undermined British credibility on the world stage. It has undermined our relationship with our key ally, which is Israel, and not Hamas. And it has, frankly, made it really clear, beyond all doubt, that our Prime Minister believes in absolutely nothing whatsoever. Shame on him for bringing shame on our country. And just as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, when we have the threat of jihadist terrorists on the border of Israel, that's their problem today, but it will be our problem tomorrow. And we have our own Prime Minister to thank for that. Well, that's my view. I'd love to know your view. Later in the show, we're going to be talking to some people who perhaps disagree with my stance on this issue. You are welcome to agree or to disagree. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I am so horrified by this announcement from the Prime Minister, but I'd like to hear what you think, particularly after Israel and US have accused Keir Starmer of rewarding Hamas for announcing a plan to recognise the Palestinian state with conditions on Israel but not on Hamas. That has, by the way, been reiterated by the Transport Secretary, who's been on the media round this morning. What's your reaction to that? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. You can text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. I'm delighted to say joining me today is Claire Pearson. She's a former Conservative government advisor. I have to say, Claire, pleasure to have you on the show. I was very, very encouraged by what Kemi Badenoch had to say yesterday. She tweeted and making, lots of very, very sensible points about this. She's been really firm on this issue. What was your reaction when you saw that utterly pompous, absurd press conference of the Prime Minister yesterday?
I was listening to it, so I didn't watch it. I had it on in the background. But the voice drives me to a distraction anyway. But you look at what he's done, which is essentially blame Israel, make everything harder for Israelis and for our country to be taken seriously on the world stage, and the terrorist organisation that's Hamas gets off scot-free. So if there's a ceasefire or not, there are no conditions on Hamas. They don't have to do anything, don't have to put any hostages back to where they should be.
But again,
that's it.
And this demand is whether Israel needs to agree to ceasefire. They just did. They literally just did. It was Hamas that didn't agree. They were agreeing to sort of give away, 1,200, 1,500, prisoners, many convicted, so people serving life in Israeli prisons. People they've captured, during this war for, committing atrocities. And they're giving them up to get 20 live and possibly another 20 dead hostages, bodies home. But that wasn't good enough for Hamas. But again, this is the thing. They're saying that, they repeat the conditions, and Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, repeated this today, that, they're still asking, saying Hamas must return the hostages. Again, well, OK, well, where's the pressure on them for that? Yeah, exactly. But you're going to... But it's not a condition of recognising the state of Palestine. They cannot be involved. They have to agree to a ceasefire, and they cannot be involved in any future Palestinian state. OK, well, so who's going to be in control of Hamas? Oh, the Palestinian Authority, the Fatah-backed Palestinian Authority led by, Mahmoud Abbas. I mean, who was last elected 20 years ago and hasn't held any elections since. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's have them in charge. Because they are apparently the, quote, moderates.
It depends which bar you're starting from.
Yeah, exactly. They're the moderates who've said that when they have a Palestinian state, they will expel every single Jew from their land. Yeah. That, of course, will be, the good kind of ethnic cleansing, not the bad kind of ethnic cleansing of moving people out of Gaza. I mean, again, you have to keep up with the rules. There's no doubt at all this is less about international politics. This has got zero to do with actually trying to bring about peace in the Middle East and saving a single life in Gaza. This is all about domestic politics, isn't it? You've got the likes of, Wes Streeting, who backed this as well, Angela Rayner, Keir Starmer himself, facing the prospect, possibly, of losing his seat at the next election because of these factions, these sort of pro-Gaza factions who think that Gaza matters more than anything else in Britain. And they face that threat. He is simply appeasing a hard left, pro-Gaza, essentially pro-Hamas lobby.
He's got really concerns with the rise of Jeremy Corbyn's little start-up party, because those are the ones
What's it called this week?
I don't know. I think we need to come up with a little competition for the best name. I've seen some online.
Zara Sultana said it wasn't the You Party or the Your Party. And then, but there's been just now the Left Party. She has suggested an interview with Novara Media,
which is really bad. She should never ever have any job naming anything ever. Pets,
that's a good
children.
She shouldn't have a job at all. But anyway.
No, I mean, that would be lovely. But so we can't have everything.
No.
But I think that he is really worried. Keir Starmer is really worried about the rise of the far left. He is worried about his backbenchers who are now emboldened to disagree with absolutely everything and push him into U-turning on every opportunity.
And they know they can get that because it's happened already. I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, I have to say, Netanyahu, this rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism and also punishes its victims. Yeah. I mean, that is the truth, isn't it? I'd like to think I was shocked by this, but I'm not, because I said that he's worse than a jellyfish. He has absolutely no backbone at all. But this won't actually be enough to appease his own Labour backbenchers, because it's not there isn't a full, arms embargo. They haven't recognised Palestinian state. There are conditions on recognising the Palestinian state. It shouldn't have conditions, the people are saying. So it won't be enough for those people, but it's absolutely gives succour to Hamas. So again, it's the worst possible measure. But this claim is that he wants to announce this at the most, the point where he can have the most influence. In what way? How is this going to influence what Israel does? Sorry, the idea. Here's the thing. This is a scenario. Okay, so I'm living in my house, and I've got terrorists living all around me who are constantly attacking me, and I go in and try and sort of tackle them. Yeah, and yes, sometimes some people die as a result of that. And someone who lives, in a nice leafy suburb in 3 counties away says, if you don't agree to let them, have their land and live in peace, even though you didn't attack them, we're going to recognise those people as legitimately having their homes. You'd be like, well, it doesn't change anything for me on the ground. I've still got genocidal terrorists living next door to me who are a threat to me, my family, my neighbours, my children, my homeland. Yeah. This is the thing they don't get. This isn't posturing. This isn't this sort of like Tuesday night meeting of, the hard left in Islington. It's not a book club. This is an existential battle for the existence of Israel and Jewish people's lives. And our Prime Minister doesn't get that. And he's married to someone Jewish. This is the bit I don't get.
He's got so much pressure around him, but he's also stuck to the sort of 2-state solution, which keeps being talked about, and I think is further away than it has ever been in the last 30
who doesn't want a
years.
2-state solution?
What's that? Hamas?
And Palestinian Authority.
Exactly.
They keep rejecting it.
Exactly. So I don't know where he thinks this negotiation's going to go. Well, it isn't a negotiation. He is kowtowing to the left of his party. He is looking at Hamas to bring him some popularity with people in this country.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Who knows where he's going to get that from?
I think that the British people as a whole, I mean, we see these horrific anti-Semitic attacks. We see stuff online is absolutely foul and disgusting. And I know so many Jewish people who are saying, we're upping sticks. We are making a plan to leave this country. That is an abomination to me. That is a source of abject shame to me as a Briton. Anyone should feel that. Muslim or Jewish or any other faith or no faith at all. No one should feel that in this country. Oh, diversity. Oh yeah. Well, apart from for one particular ethnic and religious group. I just find it extraordinary that we have got into this state. Do you think that if the Tories were still in power, we'd be in a different position?
It's hard to say, because these are the strongest words I've seen coming out of the Conservative Party for some time. So Kemi Badenoch, for once, has stood up and has said something that I fundamentally agree with. And that doesn't
you are always
often.
very critical when you think they're saying the wrong thing.
I absolutely am. But the party hasn't been particularly strong for a while on this, and it keeps sort of pushing it into the long
been
grass.
strong on this.
Yes, I suppose he has.
Well, Kemi Badenoch, just say what she messaged last night about soon after his Prime Minister's statement. When the country is looking for answers on asylum hotels, the cost of living is getting worse, and doctors are threatening to go on strike again, further endangering lives. It's disgraceful that Keir Starmer recalled his cabinet to try and sort out a political problem for the Labour Party. That is bang on, isn't it? This wasn't some sudden emergency. Recognising a Palestinian state, Kemi Badenoch says, won't bring the hostages home, won't end the war, and won't get aid into Gaza. This is political posturing at its very worst. I mean, as I've tweeted out, nailed it. Yeah. It is political posturing, isn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely is. And it isn't going to make a single bit of difference to those people who are in need of aid. It's not going to make it get to them any quicker, and it's not going to return hostages home to Israeli families.
But it is going to give succour to the terrorists who made all this happen. Let's talk about other events in the world, non-man-made disasters, and that's the tsunami warnings across the Pacific that we've woken up to today. A huge earthquake, an 8.8 magnitude earthquake off Russia's far eastern coast has triggered tsunami warnings across, California, Hawaii, Japan, China, even as far afield as New Zealand, the Philippines, Mexico, Peru. I mean, this is a huge earthquake, possibly the biggest, they think, in about 50, 60, 70 years. And because the magnitude is just extraordinary when it goes up by each magnitude. It is, again, by an order of magnitude. I mean, it is adding a zero. This is a huge earthquake, and there is a really big concern about tsunamis, and there have been warnings going out already. A lot of these countries, thankfully, are sort of, functioning countries that have a warning system. We know what happened in 2004 Boxing Day tsunami. People take these warnings seriously now, but obviously there will be concerns over the next 24 hours.
Well, there always is, and there will always be those people who either can't get away or won't, and they want to stay around and protect their homes.
If they choose not to,
but
tough.
Looking at images that have come out from places like Russia, from Japan, just looking at the damage something like this can do. And it doesn't, to us, we're not very good with earthquakes and magnitude because we don't really get them in this country. We don't really understand.
We lose a couple of wheelie bins when there's an earthquake.
And we rebuild because we're a nation that, can pick up the flower pots. But it is unbelievable the damage that this can do. And it's not just to buildings. You look at the tsunami, the amount of water that gets pulled back and the power in that shouldn't be underestimated.
I have to say, before the 2004 tsunami, I knew the word, I knew the concept, you know about Crete and things like that. But I don't remember any tsunami happening in my lifetime. And now suddenly it's earthquake warning and tsunami warning automatically. But maybe we're just more aware of it. We've got that ability to predict these things, to know about these things, and that international communication, which does help. So, well, fingers crossed we will not see loss of life on that. But we'll keep you posted as we have seen some certainly higher waves and water entering. I think Japan has faced problems already. Let's talk about what's going on in our country, though, in our capital city even. Lawless London is the headline in a number of papers. Knife offences in London have increased by 86% in a decade, according to a new report from the right-wing think tank Policy Exchange. You'll never guess You'll never guess who's been Mayor of London in all that time. Yeah, do you want to go out? Oh, yes, Sadiq Khan. Criticised by Donald Trump for what he's done in London. I didn't like the nasty person thing. I've met the guy, I know the guy. I don't think he's nasty, I just disagree with fundamentally, and I say to his face everything he says and does. But I'm also pointing out that knife crime, almost 15%, the West End of London has more knife crime than almost 15% of the rest of the capital combined. They're targeting tourists and as well. But just 5% of all robberies, so 1 in 20 robberies are actually ever solved in London in the last year, and less than 1% of theft from the person, i.e. a mugging. And we know this. I mean, how many times are we going to talk to friends and family who have had I had a bag taken off me. He didn't turn up to court last month. Still waiting for another court day. I mean, it's amazing, isn't it? These people don't turn up to court. Who knew? Deep sigh. But at least they charged him, and it's only because you have to charge this guy. They've my alleged bag thief, it's on camera. That people who say, look, I've got a bike stolen, it's tagged, or I've got a phone stolen, I know where it is, I've got to find my phone, I'm literally looking, I'm standing outside the house, I recognise the guy who stole it from me, and the police go, there's nothing we can do.
Is it any surprise that there are fewer crimes being solved? Crime is on the rise. And Sadiq Khan is saying that it's a beautiful city, it's very, very safe. And I think that...
It's diverse, you see, it's diverse, so that makes it good.
Does that make it good?
Apparently, no. Did you not know? Safe? Diversity is our strength.
I think that we need to...
You need to read up on the memos.
I do. I've lived out in the countryside for too long. I think we need to get rid of all of those e-scooters because they seem to be fuelling a lot of the crime as well. You've got kids roaming around on those, balaclavas, nicking people's phones.
It's amazing how many young men in London are so terrified of COVID they have to wear those masks, isn't it? Still very wary. Didn't wear masks when we were required to wear masks. Now wear masks. Yes, but it is absolutely mind blowing that the extra spate of crime that we have been seeing. And the growth in the last year, I mean, certainly in my neighbourhood, very, very noticeable. And the police say all the time, we don't have the resources or the police chiefs don't have the resources to catch these people. Except it's not like, each phone theft or bike theft or bag theft or mugging, they're not carried out by each individual person. It's not just one person who randomly just does one mugging or one phone theft in their entire life. It's the same people. You catch one of these people, usually men, you catch these men, you will solve the next 50 crimes don't happen. It is mind-blowing that they don't put the resources into tackling these issues.
But they should have intelligence throughout all of the boroughs in London. They should be able to share the intelligence of where these gangs are working. And they are gangs of people. It's not just a random wrong-un going around nicking some bread out of a shop. You can see what they're doing. They target certain areas, especially those in a more affluent area. So why aren't they being a bit more proactive with their policing and putting a team of people on Oxford Street, Piccadilly, somewhere in the East End, towards Canary Wharf, maybe?
I mean, look, we don't know about policing. Don't trouble your pretty little head. We don't understand.
I forget that.
Look, there is probably a pride march somewhere that they need to be busy attending. Or maybe someone's written a tweet that they're a bit cross about, and someone's been offended by it because someone's been misgendered. They've got priorities, Claire, and I really think you should don't talk about stuff you don't understand.
I'll get back in my box and let them get on with their dancing
and their rainbow shoelaces. Yes. Oh, we're trying to make light of it. Oh, today I am so incandescent about so many stories in the news today. I'd love to hear from you. Calm me down. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text on 87222. You can get in touch on X at Talk TV as well. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs one standard network rate message. But particularly on Israel and the US, accusing Keir Starmer of rewarding Hamas, because that's exactly what he's just done after he announced yesterday his plan to recognise a Palestinian state with conditions on Israel, but no actual conditions on Hamas. I do want to hear your thoughts on that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Look, I can't speak officially about this, but there are suggestions that there is food available. I mean, I wonder, and I think others are wondering, where some of this footage is actually coming from, in view of the fact that Israel has barred TV cameras from the area. So I'm not quite sure where some of these reports or where some of the food, that some of these images are actually emanating from. Look, I think there are people suffering in Gaza, but I don't think everybody is suffering, and certainly, least of all, the Hamas terrorists and the Hamas leadership.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back. 10:26 is the time. Let's get to your messages coming in about Keir Starmer basically announcing a plan to recognise Palestinian state, but with conditions on Israel and none on Hamas, and criticism from the US and Israel that's rewarding Hamas. Ian says, is this a Keir Starmer policy or one of Lord Hermer's? Oh, yeah. I mean, Lord Hermer will be totally up with this one. The Attorney General, of course. Carol says he's only done this to try and win back the hard-left terrorist supporters that have gone to the Hezbollah party. Jean says Israel is guilty of committing genocide. Oh, Jean, you need to get a dictionary to find out what genocide actually is. She says the US is complicit in the suffering of skeletal, starving children. Jean, do send me some messages about what's happening in Sudan and Yemen as well, because I'm sure you care passionately about that. Or, oh, does it not involve Israel, so you don't care? Yasmin says, can't write what I think. I think what I really think, I'd get 5 years. Yeah, oh, Yasmin, I'm editing myself, put it that way. Timothy says, new policy from Starmer rewarding fundamentalists. And Joe says he did reward them, trying to appease the Gaza loonies who won't vote for him anyway. We have so many problems at home that need solving. And Adrian said the definition of dumb in the English dictionary is Labour. Well, let's talk to Simon, who is in Basingstoke. Simon, what do you want to say?
Well, Julia, I'd like to comment on two things, if I may. The lawlessness and Gaza.
Yep.
I suggest everyone who's pro-Palestinian look for the footage from CNN, that noted far-right news channel, of the celebrations that were held in Palestine.
In Gaza?
After the 9/11 attacks.
Oh, after 9/11, not just October the 7th?
Yes, no, after the 9/11 attacks, the celebration, weeping in the street, weeping with joy in the streets,
yep.
The shouts of Allah Akbar. These are the people that we're concerned about, who celebrated the death of over 3,000 innocent people from a terrorist attack.
Well, I mean, the thing is, I still don't want their children to be killed by rockets or to die of starvation, because they're innocents. Yes, that's true, but then weren't also the children killed by a Hamas innocent? Oh, yeah.
The Israelis forced their own citizens out of Gaza when they withdrew in 2005. Yeah. Hamas was then elected. Hamas has never held another election since. Anyone protesting against Hamas has a very short lifespan. Yep. Any country that's accepted large numbers of Palestinians, Lebanon, Jordan, has suffered massively from it. Yep. Lebanon used to be the Switzerland of the Middle East. Yep. Now it's a sectarian country that's basically ungovernable and bankrupt. So, and if you look at satellite pictures of the border wall around Gaza, the thickest, densest, most controlled part of it is not actually on any part with Israel. Yep. It's on the Egyptian end of the line.
And they're run by the Muslim Brotherhood. They're run by extremists now themselves, and even they don't want them.
Exactly. No country in the Middle East wants Palestinian refugees. Yep. If Jordan could deport the ones they have, they would.
Yep.
It's massively destabilised Jordan. With respect to the lawlessness, I think there's something the Reform can do about that now. If Reform comes out and said on its first day in power, it will remove Crown immunity from British politicians, senior police officers and civil servants, allowing those people to be sued for actions that's led to harm to British citizens, then I think that will be a restraining factor on what our government does.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for that, Simon. Just interesting. Claire Pearsall's face, you're a bit confused by that. Is that a thing? You worked in the Home Office?
I'm not sure that... I think it just opens up politicians and officials to any kind of abuse of process when it comes to decisions that people
But there
don't
isn't
like.
any accountability.
No, there isn't. And I think that is a definite thing that we need to look at, but I'm not sure that prosecution is the way forward.
OK, all right. Then let's go to Colin in Rugby. Colin, what do you want to say?
Well, I'm absolutely disgusted with Keir Starmer, but then again, most of the time I'm disgusted with Keir Starmer.
No change there.
But I mean, I remember when I used to go to Israel, and during the period around 1998, I drove up through the West Bank and all that. And at that time, the Palestinians were offered a new state, and with all sorts of international. And Yasser Arafat turned it down.
It was 95%. It was 95% of the land they wanted, and in return, Israel also offered 5% of their territory in return for that missing 5%, and they still turned it down.
They turned it down, and the only thing that they want is to get rid of Israel and all the Israelis into the sea. That's what they actually want to do.
Yeah.
And it's just impossible to get anywhere with people like this. And as your previous caller said, nobody wants the Palestinians because they're so destructive to the state anywhere they move.
Well, again, this indoctrination that's been going on in the schools, let's pay people for being suicide bombers and as many for each Jew they kill. I mean, there are Labour MPs right now who are agitating, and there's a court currently telling the government that they should be allowing Palestinian refugees into this country. And I think most of us would say over our dead bodies, because the British people are pretty sane on these things. Colin, thank you very much for your call. I'm going to take a quick break. Do get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree. I take on all comers. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Up next, going to talk to Trevor Kavanagh. We're also going to be talking to an earthquake expert about that 8.8 magnitude earthquake that has sparked tsunami warnings across the Atlantic. The Pacific Rim. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 10:35. Let's talk to Trevor Kavanagh now. He's the former political editor of the Sun newspaper and joins us to talk about, where we are on international and domestic affairs. Very good morning to you.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, we had this announcement yesterday for the Prime Minister, a rather sort of pompous press conference after he held his emergency cabinet meeting yesterday. And he announced that the UK, basically will be recognising the state of Palestine. They'd be the second G7 nation to do so after France, but along with another. Huge number of countries have already recognised the state of Palestine. But many people are pointing out that not just the criticism from Israel and the US, but that this is far more about domestic politics than it is about actually anything that would help a single child in Gaza to get food or bring about any chance of peace.
Yes, I mean, this is the absolute definition of gesture politics. It's not going to happen. It will not happen. And if it did happen, it would be a disaster both for the Palestinians and for Israel. But you're right. I think that Keir Starmer is running scared. He's running scared from his left wing and from the Muslim voters upon whom he relies for quite a lot of Labour seats. So, and the thing is, as your caller Colin mentioned only a few moments ago, I think a well-informed viewer and listener, this has been tried many times in the past through very careful negotiations at the highest level involving the presidents of the United States. And every single Palestinian leader from Yasser Arafat onwards has refused point blank to go down that route when they get to the crunch. They don't want it. They regard the Palestinian people as their pawns, their propaganda weapon, and the sight of Palestinians being shot, bombed or starved is grist to their mill.
What do you make of a lot of the footage that's coming up? Because it's really interesting. Keir Starmer mentioned this of Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, who's been out defending the policy today, and again asked by every single interviewer. So the conditions are on Israel to agree to a ceasefire, to let in more aid and the like. And if they don't do that, then the Palestinian state would be recognised. It's interesting that those conditions are only on Israel, but there are no conditions on Hamas. They've said, oh yes, we do expect Hamas to release the hostages and agree to ceasefire, except they will have no role in a future Palestinian state. But there's no sign of them doing any of those three things, and they're not conditions of the recognition of a Palestinian state extraordinarily. But what do you make of this decision at this time, and why Keir Starmer is so beholden to his left wing when he's got a massive majority, he's got more than 400 MPs, and so beholden to the effectively, the Gaza vote?
Well, it's almost, isn't it, as if October the 7th never happened. Yeah. And somehow or other it's Israel's fault that 1,200 innocent young people...
There are literally people who think that.
Yes, there are. I mean, they've forgotten it, really. And in any case, Israel is to blame. It's their fault for stoking the attitudes that led to that atrocity. And this is the strangest thing about the whole Labour Party stance on this. There is no way that you can justify the idea of handing a chunk of Gaza over to an actual Palestinian state, which would not have a relationship with the next door neighbour. And indeed, I mean, we had a very interesting article in the Sun today from a former Labour MP who has actually been campaigning for a two-state solution, but points out very accurately that it's the wrong time to even consider such a thing. I mean, while you've got effectively a war in progress, you're not going to have a peaceful relationship between the two sides.
No, I mean, exactly. Well, I mean, how much do you think this has actually been directed by the media coverage? Because Heidi Alexander, the Transport Secretary, and the Prime Minister and others constantly citing, and Donald Trump as well in that press conference in Scotland, constantly citing the images. We don't want to see these images of emaciated children. We don't want to see these images of hunger. As if it's, how the West feels that's the issue as opposed to reality. As in, if we don't see it, then it doesn't really bother us, which is sadly the truth, because we're not bothered about what happens in Yemen or Sudan, because it's not on our TV screens, it's not on our social media feeds, day in, day out at all. But actually an awful lot of that footage is complete and utter propaganda. The Express at the weekend had a picture of a child as the image of, terrible image of an emaciated child. The child isn't even in Gaza. The child has been in Italy for a couple of months, where it's being treated for a congenital health problem, which is why it's so terribly skinny. I mean, so much of what this is being based on is actual downright lies.
Well, it's worse than that, because the people who are suffering in this ghastly situation, the children and the mothers who are clearly hungry, some of them in a serious state, they are the victims of Hamas, not Israel. Yeah. Hamas is stealing the food and even punishing Palestinians who try to get hold of it. All of this is being ignored, as far as I can see, by the mainstream media, apart from one or two newspapers who are giving the full picture. But this is manipulation. But it's the people who are being manipulated, the Labour Party and some of the other countries who are signing up to this call for a two-state, a new state for Palestine, are simply ignoring the facts on the ground and falling for the propaganda because they want to believe it.
Yeah.
There is an anti-Israel view which emanates at the very top and widespread across the United Nations now.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, and certainly widespread across the left wing of this country as well. Let's talk about domestic issues, because Kemi Badenoch actually, pointed out in her tweet criticising the Prime Minister's stance on this. We've got a lot of domestic problems. Earlier in the week, we were asking our audience, should he be, chatting about Gaza with Donald Trump, although he says that he didn't, when, there's stuff back home we'd like to deal with. We've got some new stats out today about knife crime offences in London. They've nearly doubled in a decade under, guess who's been in charge of London as not just the mayor, but also the Police and Crime Commissioner for London, the man who decides where resources and policing and the priorities go, Sadiq Khan, but also that only 1 in 20 muggings in London were actually solved last year by the police. We have a crisis of crime and a failure of policing in our capital city. It's actually also, many other cities are seeing big problems as well, but it's basically off the scale in London, isn't it? What's going on?
Well, I have to say, I cheered privately when I listened to Donald Trump describing our London mayor as a nasty person. I think, frankly...
He's not a nasty person. I don't like those personal things.
No, I'm sorry. But when it comes to the governance of our capital city, he is behaving in a way which can only be described as nasty. He is allowing the capital city to be run down to the point where people are afraid as tourists to come to this country. I mean, shoplifting, phone crime, muggings, and stabbings. The number of the number of shoplifting crimes has risen, as you know, to more than 500,000 in a year. And this is rampant, and it actually affects people as they watch it happening on their doorsteps.
Yep.
And he's turning a deaf ear and a blind eye to all of this. So I think that in terms of politics is concerned, that's nasty.
Well, OK, that's a fair point. I mean, particularly nasty. Also, we've had more details coming out about what happened with grooming gangs, particularly in Rotherham, where 5 grooming gang victims have come forward to claim they were abused not just by the grooming gangs in Rotherham, but also by police officers who were supposed to rescue them from the grooming gangs. One of them says she was raped from the age of 12 by a serving South Yorkshire police officer who threatened to hand her back to her abusers if she did not comply. And her view was, I've been abused, gang raped so many times. It was easier to be raped by him alone than to be handed back to the grooming gangs. I mean, mind-blowing stuff. Anyone who's got a daughter will feel this, in their stomach. She later claimed she was later forced into abortion when she was 15, and a social worker contacted the police, and the officer who turned up to interview her was the same one who'd been raping her, and he ripped up her statement in front of her. Others reporting police officers having sex with grooming gang victims, abusing girls who they were supposed to be helping. I'm pretty sure you've been around the block a long time, so have I. We've been covering these stories for a long time. None of this comes as a surprise to you.
It doesn't come as a surprise, but it is a total shock to think that this could be happening not just amongst the grooming gangs, but among the police officers who are supposed to be protecting us and our young children. After all, these are our kids. These are British children who are vulnerable and in care. They're supposed to be in care. And they're getting raped by the very people who are supposed to be caring for them. And the appalling thing is that what is actually happening right now? We've got promises of an inquiry, but it's taking forever. And by the time, it will not happen while this government's in office. It will be kicked into the long grass. And in the meantime, these gangs are still grooming and raping across the country.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, it's not a historic issue. It's something that's happening today, right now, and probably on a bigger scale. And interestingly, I've been asking it for quite some time, why do we never hear about grooming gangs in London in recent weeks and months? There's been talk about actually it's on a bigger scale in London. Why wouldn't it be on a big scale in London as our capital city with 10 million people? It is extraordinary. I just want to ask you as a general query. I mean, we've got, we've just had the NHS, we've had strikes, people can't get a doctor's appointment, we've got the cost of living crisis, we've now got, rising unemployment, we've got a huge number of young people on benefits, we have the asylum hotels, we've got the grooming gang issue, rising crime. Do you think that this is all coming to a head, and that we are entering some would say dangerous territory, but some might also say perhaps territory we somehow need to enter. I've spoken to a few people who've never broken the law in their lives. I mean, they might have once, speeded at 33 miles per hour. That's the extent of their criminality. And when I've said, we could be heading for dangerous territory with protests and violence on the streets, and they have all, to a man and a woman, replied, good. We need to get there. There needs to be a reckoning. Now, I would never support any violence on our streets, any criminality. We should protest peacefully. We live in a democracy, and we have the rule of law. But do you think that all of these issues are at the point now where they are coming to a head, and if they are not dealt with, we are going to be entering dangerous territory?
Well, I think you're absolutely right on all of that. The big question is if they are not dealt with properly. While this government is in office, they will not be dealt with properly. And this is why Nigel Farage is so many points ahead in the polls right now, because he is identifying that very sort of, these are the frogs in the boiling water. Are they going to jump out and do something? Or is it too late? I tend to fear that it's too late, because the authorities, from the very big top to bottom, whether it's the police, the politicians, or the public officials in the blob who are turning a blind eye, the immigration judges who refuse to send anybody back, no matter how heinous the crimes they've committed already. How are you going to reverse that? The people will get very angry. There may well be some sort of demonstration in the streets, but they've already preempted that with this online draconian measure to stop people actually seeing these things online or on television anymore. If you haven't got an age certificate showing that you're old enough to view it, you can't even see it on Twitter or whatever you call it these days.
Yeah, again, and hence people turning to VPNs. I think we're into some very, very, very dangerous territory. But I think the country does need a reckoning, because I think we've allowed our politicians to continue doing this, even though we keep telling them this is what we want, and they keep ignoring us, and there will be a reckoning. Trevor Kavanagh, former political editor of The Sun, thank you so much for joining us. Claire Pissell, your thoughts on that?
And I think that Trevor was right when he says that the online harms bill will actually stop a lot of this, because we won't be able to see if people are protesting and what they're protesting
But
about.
often this stuff isn't on mainstream media at all anyway. I mean, I'm amazed the number of things I talk to people about, they go, I don't know anything about this. You think, how do you not know anything about this?
I mean, I suppose it's because we look at varying different forms of media that are available to us. I don't have a problem with looking at other stuff.
If you just watch the BBC, you're basically uninformed of what's going on in this country.
Absolutely, and it comes into YouTube, which we'll talk about later, and the rise of those kind of media sources. But you do need to be able to do that, and I do think people are going to be coming out and are very, very angry.
Absolutely. Well, indeed, there may be a political earthquake, but there may also be tsunamis after the 8.8 magnitude earthquake we saw just off the coast of Russia. Big warnings for tsunamis across the Pacific Rim. We're going to talk to earthquake expert Dr. David Whitehouse up next about that. This is Talk.
There are no words to describe what happened. It's kind of not the job of the public to do so. It's for the families to articulate what matters to them, particularly in the aftermath. And all of them have established charities in the name of their children, and each have found their own way to either live with or overcome their difficulties.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. We'll be talking about political earthquakes. Let's talk about real earthquakes. An 8.8 magnitude earthquake that hit off the coast of the eastern coast of Russia has prompted tsunami warnings across the Pacific. Let's talk about that now with scientist and earthquake expert, Dr. David Whitehouse. A very good morning to you, David.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us. Can you just first explain to us just how big, how huge an 8.8 magnitude earthquake is?
It is extremely huge. It is well within the top 10 most powerful earthquakes recorded in the scientific era. It's probably number 6. So this is a giant of an earthquake. And had it occurred in many other places where the 2011 earthquake occurred, or indeed where many of these others have occurred, it could have caused major devastation.
Yeah.
But although it was a dramatic earthquake, a so-called megathrust, which displaced an enormous column of water which set off the tsunami going, it does seem as though it's not as big a tsunami as could have been, and that the authorities have been spectacular in informing people and getting people out of the way.
And things have massively improved. I mean, I think most of us remember, first real awareness of how dangerous the tsunamis were. 2004 Boxing Day tsunami, and horrendous devastation that caused on so many countries. In terms of whether an earthquake is going to lead to damage, we've seen we had the earthquake in Turkey, we saw huge damage there. But we often see earthquakes in more sort of first world countries like Japan. They don't cause as much devastation, and certainly not loss of life, because they're able to build buildings, to building regulations and actually have, able to keep people safe. But when an earthquake strikes that causes a tsunami, what is it? Is it just that it's underwater? Is it a level of magnitude? Is it how deep it is? Or what is it that means that there is a devastating tsunami, or just, a few feet extra of water?
Well, you're quite right to identify the human factors that multiply the effect of an earthquake, particularly in Turkey, where most people were killed by falling buildings when they shouldn't have been. And as you say, Japan, the most earthquake-prone country in the world, is able to cope with this very well. This was a megathrust. Now, what that means is that the Pacific tectonic plate, which is a huge, dense piece of rock, which is being forced underneath the continental plate, the Asian continental plate, at 3 inches a year. Now, that might not sound very much, but with the mass that's being pushed there and the build-up of tension means that in this region, this part of the Pacific Rim of Fire where this happens, you get build-up of incredible tensions and you get a sudden release. And a megathrust is when the rock actually moves up and down. If it waggles from side to side, that doesn't cause so much of a tsunami. But if it moves up and down by even a few meters, that displaces an enormous amount of water. Now, the way that tsunami then spreads out from the earthquake region can be very variable. It depends upon the topography of the sea. It depends upon exactly where it occurred. And it's not quite like ripples in a pond. It's more like spokes in a wheel. And this incredible energy then travels at the speed of a jet airliner across the Pacific. So you actually, unlike an earthquake, you get several hours notice, except in the case of 2011 in Japan, where it occurred so nearby they didn't. So Hawaii was looking at Midway, because there are tidal gauges on Midway, to get an estimation of how bad it was. There are, after 2011, there are sensors on the sea floor which can look at this, but the way the tsunami works is in deep ocean, you hardly notice it.
Yeah.
The energy is spread out. When you get to the shore, the energy is concentrated. And that is always an uncertain estimate as to how much damage, as to how high the tsunami will be.
So a country or an island that could be further away can get more damage than one that's near. It just depends how it's moved. So we know that Hawaii has been the highest alert. Philippines, Japan, California coast, Mexico, Peru. I mean, even as far afield as New Zealand have had these warnings. You mentioned earlier that it perhaps looked like it wasn't going to be as bad as first feared. What have we seen so far?
Well, we've seen Midway, actually, the thing which happened as soon as this earthquake occurred is that everybody started watching the tidal gauges on islands nearby, because that gives you an early indication of what's happening. And Midway was a little alarming for an hour or so. But when the tsunami reached Hawaii, of which it's the first part of the tsunami, you have to say that it just doesn't hit there and stop. The ocean sloshes about and you get various waves and counter waves. So you have to be vigilant for at least 24, 36 hours, because the first one is not always the big one. But so far, Hawaii has managed it very well. You've seen a few feet. It was thought that it could have been worse than that. The Tokyo 2011 was 40 feet.
Yeah,
now,
and we remember
water,
that footage, don't we? That's when we had the cars floating down, just the river in gorge took over the motorways, and just the cars were just floating around the bay, weren't they?
That's right, and you must remember that water is heavy stuff. It is solid stuff. Even a few feet of water coming towards you packs an incredible punch and can be fatal and can do enormous damage. So getting people out of the way, which they're now very skilled at, particularly in Alaska, because Alaska is in the firing line for these earthquakes in the Japanese region. They never went to the highest alert. They started off with an information, then they went to alert. They never went to a warning. So they have downgraded it. So we seem to have had an example of the power of nature and been let off a little lightly this time.
Certainly, we hope so. Again, you say that it could be, more to come in the next 24 hours or so. Dr. David Whitehouse, thank you so much for enlightening us on that. Scientist and earthquake expert. Claire Pearsall, I mean, I think a lot of us are fascinated by these incredible, can be natural disasters, and we're so aware of tsunamis from 2004 onwards and the devastation that was causing, and 2011 in Tokyo, of course. But it does look hopeful that we're not going to see a disaster, but a lot of that's down to having the warnings, people moving to higher ground and building those defences.
Yeah, it is, and just having more sensors out there, from what David was just saying on the seabed and looking at the different islands and things like that, to early warning and people paying attention to those warnings. I think that's always
that's crucial. But again, that means that people have to you must never use sort of crying wolf tactics that mean that people then don't take it seriously. We've seen that in flooding in other countries, haven't we, where people go, we've had that warning from a hurricane warning.
Exactly.
This is also the one disaster we get where you don't get the people go, climate change, whatever it is, climate change.
Isn't
the ability of humans to deal with these disasters by forewarning, by moving away to high ground, and to actually cut the loss of life. And again, things like building regulations, if they're obeyed, can keep people safe in these scenarios, certainly with earthquakes. But we'll keep our fingers crossed for everybody who's been affected by those warnings. Keep you up to date on any developments on that as well. So much more to come. I do want to hear from you on this recognition of a Palestinian state, which is almost certainly going to come in the next couple of months from our Prime Minister, even though Netanyahu and the US government has warned that this is basically giving succor to Hamas and rewarding them for October the 7th. Do you agree or not? Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to have your say. This is Talk.
My message to people smugglers is this. I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Smash the gangs. Smash the people smuggling gangs.
People schmiggling puns.
He couldn't even smash an avocado for a piece of toast.
Or the people... What would that... The people...
I think smashing the gangs is a deterrent. Well, it might be if you smashed any, if you found any.
The people smash...
and he hasn't smashed anything. I mean, literally all he does is he smashes records every sort of couple of weeks, when more and more people come in a period of 24 hours.
Smash the gangs that are running this vile trade.
You're never going to smash the gangs. That's something that basically is impossible. The gangs are like the Hydra. You cut the head off and another two grow.
So I did write to ministers and say that I wasn't convinced that smashing the gangs was the right sort of way of thinking about things.
We will smash the gangs that undermine our security.
Keir Starmer has just tweeted 15 minutes ago. He says, "I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source." Maybe I'll just read it all in his accent, shall I?
There is no return to freedom of movement. We have left the EU. I do not accept that prevents us working with other police units here, with prosecutors here, to smash the gangs.
Well, I'm sure the smuggling gangs are absolutely quaking in their boots now. Keir Starmer's on their case. Solving this issue, smashing the gangs, is that the impossible dream, Tom?
It really seems beyond him at the minute, I have to say.
We're going to get the evil people smugglers and we're going to smash them and we're going to put them in jail. That will solve the migrant crisis. Prime Minister Keir Starmer's promise to smash the gangs has resulted in just 5 convictions. Hurrah for operating small boats.
So what he really wants to say is that this policy of smashing the gangs is a total and utter disaster. There isn't a cat in hell's chance that it's going to work. You
It's
just can't
crap.
say it.
It's crap. That's what he's basically saying.
I know you're angry about immigration. I get it. Mark my words, I will take back control of our borders. That means cutting migration, ending the use of asylum hotels, and ramping up our efforts to stop small boat crossings.
It's like a parallel universe, the real world, as told by the impressive David Bolt, and Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves' fantasy world.
We will smash the people smuggling gangs at source.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. We're heading towards 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. This is Talk, the home of common sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DB Plus Radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it is great to have your company. If you've missed any of the show already, I will be expecting a letter from your mum. Don't forget, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You've got no excuses for not finding it. It's called the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, and it's on YouTube. Hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this, going to be talking more about Israel and the US accusing Keir Starmer of rewarding Hamas after the Prime Minister announced a plan to recognise a Palestinian state in September. The PM said the step would be taken unless Israel met a series of conditions, including ending the appalling situation in Gaza in terms of aid. But he placed not a single condition on Hamas, including, I don't know, releasing the hostages, laying down their arms, agreeing to a ceasefire. One of the requirements of Israel is that they have to agree to a ceasefire, except they have agreed to repeated ceasefires. They certainly agreed to one only a week or two ago. It was Hamas that didn't. But no, apparently that's not good enough for the Prime Minister. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli PM, says the decision not only rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism, but also punishes its victims, and warns that the Islamic terrorist threat is on their borders right now, but it will be in our borders tomorrow. Is he right? Do you agree with him? I certainly do. I think this is an insane decision, far more about virtue singing and gesture politics online and to the left, but also far more about basically appeasing his left-wing vote and the pro-Gaza vote in this country, and particularly in his own Islington constituency, than this is about actually doing anything to help a single child in Gaza, or indeed bring about peace in the Middle East. I'd love to hear your thoughts. What is your reaction to all of that? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text us on 87222, put the word talk at the beginning of your message. You can send us a message on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate, and text costs one standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking about knife crime offences in London, increasing by a whopping 86% in a decade. And guess who's been in charge all of that decade? Oh, Oh, Sadiq Khan, yes, he's the London Mayor and the Police and Crime Commissioner. At the same time, only 1 in 20 muggings in the capital was solved last year. It's a new report from the think tank Policy Exchange. So what is going on? It's far worse than in any other of our major cities. So what is going on with policing in our capital? Plus, 5 victims of grooming gangs in Rotherham have said they were also sexually abused by serving police officers at the time. According to one victim, testimony, corrupt officers worked with the gangs or failed to act on child sex abuse. We'll talk more about that as well. Joining me for the conversation throughout today is Claire Pearsall. She's former Conservative government advisor. Thank you once again for joining us. I'm a little rant at the beginning of the show because I'm genuine. I mean, I've been ranting at home ever since Keir Starmer went on the telly. I didn't actually tweet for a little bit because I didn't want to write anything that I should go too far. But I mean, it is utterly outrageous that the Prime Minister has laid out conditions on what Israel, a democratic state that is our ally, should do before they. If there were to be no recognition of a Palestinian state, but no conditions on Hamas. I mean, let's just go through basically what he said, because the ultimatum, he said the catastrophic failure to supply aid to Gaza meant we see starving babies, children too weak to stand, images that will stay with us for a lifetime. Like, again, it's not about you. It's not about your feelings, Keir. It's about the reality. He says the UK would recognise a Palestinian state unless Israel reached a ceasefire, committed itself to a two-state solution, which we know Netanyahu's not in favour of, and made clear it would not annex the occupied West Bank. We know Israel's opposition to those terms. It basically means it's almost inevitable we will see a Palestinian state recognised. But not only did he not put any conditions on Hamas as a result, as a part of this, even his they haven't added to them since. The cabinet minister Heidi Alexander was on the media round today, and she said we also expect we want Hamas to return the hostages, free the hostages, agree to a ceasefire, and accept that they will have no future running any in Gaza in the future. I mean, but they're not going to agree to do any of that, and yet they could still get a Palestinian state. Is Benjamin Netanyahu right when he wrote on X yesterday, a jihadist state on Israel's border today will threaten Britain tomorrow. Appeasement towards jihadist terrorists always fails. It will fail you too. It will not happen. And he said this actually harms the efforts to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza. Is Netanyahu right?
I think on this he is absolutely right. And I've criticised a lot of the actions that he has taken because I think that you need to look at the behaviour of Netanyahu's government. But it doesn't mean that Hamas can be allowed to get away with being a terrorist
I hold no candle for Netanyahu, and I don't agree with a lot of the things that have happened on the West Bank.
No, but this, I think he is absolutely spot on, because what happens over there does have an impact over here in the coming months.
Well, we are seeing that, are we not, in terms of how it's affecting our foreign policy? This pro-Gaza stance. Is this about... Look, it's not... We know this isn't about helping anybody, any child suffering in Gaza right now, because it's not going to do a single thing to make any difference there. But is this more about virtue signalling and gesture politics to sort of play nice on the world stage and get, oh, well done from his lot? Or is this actually about political posturing and basically appeasing his own Labour backbenchers, who, by the way, the hard left, a lot of the ones who pontificate on this, a lot of those who, and even in his own party, in his own constituency, Wes treating his health secretary, he himself facing losing his seat in Islington because of the sort of the hard left, the pro-Gaza obsessed people in his own constituency, that actually it's not going to be enough to please them either.
It never will be, unless you start letting in Palestinian refugees into the country, which is a really bad idea.
You think you've seen protests now? Good luck with that one.
Absolutely. But unfortunately, those kind of people who would support that action are exactly the same people who are living in the places like Islington, and they think it's all very, very simple. So Starmer is playing to that crowd, he is playing to his backbenchers and Emmanuel Macron.
Yeah.
No one else really gets a look in. It doesn't matter what anybody else says to him. It doesn't matter what opinion is out there.
Yeah.
That's all he takes on board.
One of the things I don't get is the people who are very much pro-Palestinian refugees being able, in asylum seekers being able to come here. And we've got a case of a family of 6, I mentioned on the show yesterday, who are basically appealing, and a judge in the courts has basically said to the government, you need to rethink this. They've got some distant relative, I don't know, a second cousin or someone living in England. So they want a right to come here because they say their life is intolerable in Gaza. Well, that's 2 million people, right? So so we open the flood. That's one case that sets a precedent. 2 million people could come here. I don't understand when Donald Trump says we're going to remove those people to other countries or they should move to countries. That is an outrageous act of ethnic cleansing and an abomination and a war crime. But if, say, those 2 million people said, oh, we'd like to come and live in England, that'll be fine. Now, I get there's a difference between choosing it and being forced, but it's either your homeland and you want to live in it or it isn't, right?
Yeah, and that's the attitude that you find, is that there will be those who genuinely have a link to the United Kingdom, but I think they're going to be very, very small in number.
I don't care. I literally don't care if you've got a link to the United Kingdom. I don't care. It's irrelevant.
I also don't think that the UK should change its policy just based on some scant information coming out that they may or may not have a relative over here. I'm sorry, I don't buy any of this.
I just don't even know why it's relevant. I really, really don't. It's just not our job.
Look at the neighbouring countries, and you have to look at why Egypt are not taking people across their border.
And bearing in mind that Egypt is run by the Muslim Brotherhood, and they're nutters too.
Yeah,
they really, really are. By the way, good news. Hawaii's tsunami evacuation has, in the last couple of moments, been lifted. Residents have been told it is safe to return to previously evacuated areas, which is very, very good news. We had spoken a few moments ago to Dr. David Whitehouse, who's an earthquake expert, about actually it did look like that this wasn't quite the fears of a huge tsunami after that huge 8.8 mega thrust earthquake. I like that mega thrust earthquake. Never heard that term before. But we learn something new on the show every day. That looks like we're not going to be seeing the devastation of tsunamis. So fingers crossed that holds. In terms of where this goes, though, so let's say, OK, Israel have basically put 2 fingers back up quite rightly at Keir Starmer. There may or may not be a rift with the US, but I think Donald Trump is keeping quiet on this stuff. But that's it. He's been as staunchly in favour of Israel as anyone could be. Israel's going to carry on doing what they have to do. The BBC and everyone else is going to carry on, pointing the finger at Israel, claiming it's all their fault. And believing every single bit of Hamas propaganda about the number of deaths. 60,000 people have died. It's a tragedy. Well, at least 20,000 plus of those were Hamas fighters. I think that's a bloody good thing. Every single Hamas terrorist who's been blown to smithereens is a jolly good thing. And I'm happy to have a glass of champers tonight to celebrate that news. But there we are. I mean, bizarre the way these things are greeted. But in terms of how this plays out, so before the United Nations meeting, we're going to get this announcement. We've recognised the state of Palestine. What happens then?
But nothing happens.
Brilliant. So we're just going to show just how utterly pointless both France and Britain are as the only 2 G7 members who will be recognising.
Nothing's going to change.
Just embarrassing.
There's no incentive for Hamas to even start looking at any kind of ceasefire or
why would you?
Leaving hostages.
They're winning this.
Well, of course they are.
Yeah.
They put out their own numbers, as you say. The Hamas-run health ministry put out their own numbers of people who are dead, dying, and ill, and we have to take that as gospel. Well, I'm sorry, but we can't get in there to verify. And this is where Israel needs to play their part to allow international journalists.
I know. I still think if you get those journalists in, I think for the ones who are going, I don't think we're going to get anything more sound in terms of reporting when Jeremy Bowen's in Gaza or not. Frankly, I think
sensible journalists.
I think he's utterly beholden at the moment. Let's talk about stuff going on back home, because this does have an impact on us back home. And as Prime Minister Netanyahu was saying about the Islamist jihad issue, and we've got ongoing issues of the asylum hotels, and who are these people, and rapes and goodness knows what. We have the Rotherham grooming gangs. And again, of people from largely Pakistan, coming from a small part of Pakistan, a completely backward medieval society. I'm very much of the view that maybe we really shouldn't be taking anybody from these sort of countries, because I'm really not sure that they understand any of our values or our way of life. And certainly those thousands of men who've been taking part in those grooming gangs and all. But the 5 victims have come forward to talk publicly, but other people have said this, and this is something I've been hearing for a very long time. And Maggie Oliver, who left Greater Manchester Police to basically be the whistleblower on this issue, and has been a fantastic campaigner on this issue. She has certainly spoken about this. But these grooming gang victims saying, they were actually abused not just by the grooming gangs, but by the police as well, who were meant to help them. One being repeatedly raped, but basically said, look, if you complain about me, I'm just going to send you back to the grooming gangs where they basically hold you captive. So. But this doesn't come as a surprise.
No, it doesn't.
And this is why you can't have the police or the local councils doing these investigations. Why you need that independent public inquiry.
Which is what we're not getting. And we've been promised the independent inquiry for such a long time. And successive governments have covered this up, have ignored the evidence right in front of their noses. And it's appalling. And my heart goes out to those victims. They really don't. You think that a police officer is there to protect you, and they are the ones abusing you, saying, if you don't behave, I'll just send you back to the other bad person around the corner.
It's just extraordinary. And again, there'll be other people who knew it was going on. That is the reality. As in all of these cases, we need names and we need prosecutions. I don't care. I don't care if they're 90 now. I want them slung into prison and to be treated behind bars as they should be treated. And you know exactly what I mean by that, don't you? Let's talk about other criminals. Knife crime offences in London have nearly doubled in the last decade. Only 1 in 20 muggings in London were solved last year. Guess who's been... Just guess. Just guess. Take a wild... Ironically, take a wild stab in the dark. And guess who has been the London mayor all that time? Oh, Sadiq Khan. Yay. Now, a lot of people don't realise, he is not just the mayor, the whole city, 10 million people. He's also the Police and Crime Commissioner. Part of his job is to decide whether you allocate resources that he gets from central government and council tax to policing, or to, for instance, hiring some more people on 6-figure salaries to work in his PR in the Greater London Council. Oh, well, that's what he ends up doing. The GLA. He has, hundreds of staff on 6-figure salaries. It's extraordinary. But apparently we haven't got enough police officers to walk the streets, keep us safe, or even to actually go and, basically arrest someone and take the phone back of someone who says, my phone has been stolen, I've got to find my phone on it, I can locate it, it's in this house, I've seen the bloke coming in and out, and he's the bloke who took it from me 2 days ago. Can you go in and arrest him? Sorry, we don't have the resources. We're too busy monitoring Twitter.
And you think this is largely the problem. If they actually dealt with those kind of crimes, then people would see justice being done and get their property back, hopefully.
You'd also see a reduction in crime.
Of course you would, because people wouldn't do it if they know that there is a good proportion of them being caught for it.
No, but also, if you catch one person for one crime, it's not the first time... crimes. Yeah, the guy who stole my bag last year, I'm going to guess it wasn't his first... Well, the man who allegedly stole my bag, given that when they actually went to track him down, the police, they finally identified him, he was actually in prison already for something else. I'm pretty sure it wasn't his first offence.
Do you think he may have had a little career in that area?
But this thing, we know what Rudy Giuliani did in New York all those years ago, and I lived in New York before and after, so I saw the impact. And there's lots of talk about, did other demographic changes impact the crime levels? But basically, the idea was, you jaywalk, you urinate in the street, you've got a broken tail light, you spit in the street, you're doing, you're stopping and searching. You do any of these little minor things, we are going to be there, and the police are going to take you in. And you know what? Those people were found to have drugs on them, they had knives on them, they had guns on them, they were arrested, they were taken off the street, they were prosecuted for minor crimes, and then they weren't committing the other bigger crimes, because the people who do those things... It's a funny thing that people who stab people, or people who thieve and things, amazingly, don't obey other laws too. I know, we're all surprised. Wow. They do ride on the pavement and through red lights, and, and they're the people who, put their feet on the seats on the train and play their music loud and threaten people. They say, would you mind awfully not imposing your music on me on the bus? These are the people. You take those sort of 50,000 people out, every city in this country would be a pleasure to live in.
And if you get them early doing those kind of crimes, then they're not going to go on to commit the rapes and the murders afterwards, because if they always start, you would hope, but you start with those kind of crimes. In my village, you've got youths and catapults. And you think...
Is that your biggest issue? In your village?
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, it is. It's a terrible issue, and we all know
problems.
But they shouldn't be roaming
what are they
around.
Catapulting?
People's houses, cars, pigeons, cats, dogs, nasty individuals. But they are around about the age of 13. So then you have the real lefty pearl-clutching mob going, well, they're only children, there's nothing they can do. What about having a youth centre open?
Oh, well, do you know what? If only
them.
ping pong can solve everything in this country.
Precisely.
And
I just think arrest them.
Well, but exactly, short, sharp shock, terrify the living daylights out of them, give their parents a slap, proverbial, and to actually say, do your job as... You and I both got teenagers. If we found out our kids were doing anything like that,
mine would be begging for the police to come.
I would literally be like going, Phil, run to the police station. Yeah. I'll give you a 5-minute head start. Yes. Good luck. Good luck getting there. 11. Old school parenting.
Yeah.
Oh, and do you have a law-abiding kid that you like?
I do.
Me too. Isn't that weird? I wonder if there's a link. Right, we're putting the world to rights, people. Stay tuned. Lots more to come. We're going to talk to the brilliant, the fantastic Jake Wallace-Simons about the recognition of a Palestinian state, from which we're going to get, basically, in a couple of months from Keir Starmer. What does he make of it? I've got a funny feeling he's not on Keir Starmer's side. We'll talk to him up next. I'd love to hear from you after that. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call to have your say on any of the topics that we are talking about. This is Talk.
They have a political agenda that is not in the interest of this country. Yeah. It's costing the NHS billions. Doctor strikes, it's about the 12th strike we've had in about 2 years. It's cost about $1.5 billion. And if you look at what Rachel Reeves is doing with the economy, well, I mean, all of your listeners will know, Mike, we don't have that kind of money. No. It's not good for patient safety. People die during these strikes, operations delayed, people not getting the care that they need. And that's why I've said, right, enough, let's just ban these strikes and get doctors back to work.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. We're going to get lots of common sense right now from Jake Wallace-Simons. He's the author of Israelophobia, the newest version of the oldest hatred and what to do about it, and joins us right now. Thank you very much for joining us, Jake.
Good morning.
Let's talk about this announcement from Keir Starmer last night. Just first of all, I mean, we've spoken to you many times since October the 7th. I mean, it was a day of shame, was it not, for our country? Our Prime Minister making the announcement that he would, unless Israel, not Hamas, unless Israel agrees to certain conditions, there will be a recognition of the state of Palestine. What was your reaction to what he had to say?
I thought it was the darkest day for British foreign policy since the invasion of Iraq. I mean, there are two sides here. There's Israel and there's Hamas. It's messy, but there are two sides. And it does seem as if Britain has now taken the side of Hamas. And I say that because all of the demands that Keir Starmer made upon Israel could have been written for him by Hamas. He demanded that Israel stops the war. There was no demand on Hamas to release the hostages first. There was no demand on Hamas to surrender and to leave power. That's exactly what Hamas wants, Israel to stop the war without winning. He also demanded that the aid would be put back into the hands of the UN to distribute. The reason why Israel took it out of the UN's hands was because the UN was allowing it to be taken by Hamas. Hamas could then sell that aid and pay its fighters and continue the war. So all the incentives that Keir Starmer was laying out to Hamas was, look, if you carry on the war, if you carry on starving the Palestinians, if you keep the hostages underground, then we will reward you by recognising a Palestinian state and bringing more pressure on Israel. There was no incentive on Hamas to end the war and release the hostages at all. It could have been written for him by Hamas.
Well, indeed, they paid lip service, but he and Heidi Alexander, who's the cabinet minister doing the media round today, asked, what were the conditions on Hamas? Were these conditions? I mean, repeated questions on Radio 4 and on Sky and elsewhere, where, so what are the conditions? Are these conditions on Hamas? They say, well, do we expect Hamas to, release the hostages, to agree to a ceasefire, except they will have no future in any future Palestinian state ruling it. But these weren't conditions. I mean, this question was asked probably about 10 times that I heard this morning. And at no point they say, yes, these are also conditions on Hamas. And this is an incredible about turn, and everything is rested, it seems to me, on this idea that, and the Prime Minister went on about this, and many political leaders have said this in the last few days, it's about what they're seeing on the television, and we can't forget seeing these images of starving children, and we can't see this play out on the television. This is about our feelings rather than the facts on the ground.
Exactly. In fact, Emmanuel Macron, before he decided to recognise a Palestinian state a couple of years ago, gave an interview in which he talked about this issue and said it wasn't right to recognise a state based on indignation. And he was absolutely right then. Why he's changed his mind, I don't know. But you can't make policy based on pictures that you're seeing on television because it's partial. Hamas is controlling what we see. The media is very partial in what we see. It's not showing you starvation in Ethiopia or in Bangladesh or anywhere else where it exists, or in Yemen, with the world's worst humanitarian crisis. It's only showing it to you in Gaza. Why? There's an agenda here. There's a political agenda here that's coming through. I'm not saying journalists are working with a political intent, but I'm saying they're being manipulated by the stuff that's coming out of Gaza.
But hold on a second. Jeremy Bowens, the international editor, correspondent for the BBC, he's been a war reporter for years. He's someone I used to massively respect. Now, I just shout at the radio whenever he's on because of some of the nonsense he comes out with. He knows what he's doing. When they're talking, when we've got, national newspapers printing pictures of emaciated children, when the actual wider picture, which people are able to track down, shows a plump mother and a perfectly well-fed sibling, or even a child in this case that was actually not even in Gaza and is actually, because there's a congenital problem, and has been in Italy being treated, having been helped to leave Gaza by the Israeli government, and has been in Italy for two months. They are complicit, are they not?
I think, sadly, that's a fair assessment. One thing, fabricating or exaggerating or giving a false narrative is one thing, but there is real suffering in Gaza. I've got no problem with that being reported.
Absolutely.
But the message from reporting that has got to be, look at this suffering, let's pressure Hamas to release the hostages and surrender. That's got to be the message. Let's stand up for democracy and against jihadism, rather than the message being, let's pressure Israel to stop the war, to stop the suffering, and leave Hamas in power, leave their hostages there. It's absolutely top-to-top. It's Alice in Wonderland stuff.
But isn't there, a lot of people point out, it was not normally the case that if you're at war, you're expected to provide aid to your enemy. We didn't provide aid to the Germans in the Second World War or like. But people point out, but when Israel is in control of Gaza and people can't leave Gaza, they do have a duty of care to the people of Gaza in terms of providing basic aid. And, a 4-year-old child, a 3-month-old baby, even a 30-year-old mother, they didn't commit the atrocities on October the 7th, so they shouldn't be punished. What's the argument for that?
Well, you're absolutely right, and that's why Israel is providing aid into Gaza. That's the whole point. Israel's providing aid into Gaza. The UN has been refusing to deliver it. It's been rotting in the sun. Hamas has been stealing it. The distribution has been inadequate. Therefore, people are starving. Now, who benefits from the starvation in Gaza? Not Israel. Israel only gets the blame. Who benefits? Hamas benefits, because the world turns against Israel and seeks to implement Hamas's agenda.
OK, well then, look, Israel, this is a wily government. I mean, God, when you think about, the Hezbollah pager, absolute genius attack. When you talk about, their ability to get information and to be able to target in nuclear bunkers in Israel, in Iran. they must realise they are losing the propaganda war. So when these images come out from Israel, from Gaza, when we have these claims, and they are on a daily basis, and I've seen people say, there was a politician talking about, I've seen those images of people being shot. I look at images of people being shot when they're trying to get food. Well, there aren't any images of IDF soldiers being shot. I've looked for them. They don't exist, but apparently people have seen them. They're just simply not available anywhere on the internet or in the mainstream media, but they report this stuff. Why doesn't Israel do a better job of making sure that the facts are known?
I think that this is a problem, and it's part of the Israeli culture. Israel was born out of people who had nowhere else to go, who were refugees, who'd suffered horrendous anti-Semitism. They came to the conclusion, look, we're not going to excuse or explain ourselves anymore. We're going to be good for ourselves. You're going to hate us anyway. We're just going to carry on. And after October the 7th, as an illustration of this, a lot of the resources that were previously diverted towards spokespeople were reduced because the war fighting was seen as a bigger priority. Israel doesn't see explaining itself as a priority. It sees winning the war as a priority because it thinks that people are going to hate it anyway, frankly, with some justification.
I think they may well be right on that. Exactly. It doesn't matter when claims from Hamas are debunked. I mean, again, latest claim yesterday that the health ministry of Gaza says that 60,000 people have died, and people talk about how terrible it is. Well, we know that at least 20,000 of those were jihadist Hamas fighters. We should be cheering their deaths. I don't remember us grieving over the ISIS militants being killed.
Exactly. I mean, Israel has a bit of a Millwall attitude. No one likes us, we don't care. We're going to carry on. We're going to do what we think is the moral thing, and everyone hates us. That's fine. That's their problem. To you and I, it's hugely frustrating because we wish we had more support coming out of Israel in giving it forced people like me to articulate what's really going on, and there should really be a state-backed campaign to do so. They've really ceded the ground to Hamas in terms of the propaganda, but they're winning the shooting war, which I guess to them is what matters.
And we should, as journalists, you've been a foreign correspondent for many years, we should be critical when Israel does things that are wrong, or if there are war crimes alleged, and always will. I hold no candle for the Israeli government. I just speak as I find, and I've got the usual messages, I'm sure you do. How much are Mossad paying you? You baby killing whore, whatever. Every word under the sun. It's never going to stop me saying what I think is just morally right position. Why do you think the Prime Minister has changed his position, though? Is it because he genuinely believes that this will make a difference and will bring about peace and mean that children are fed in Gaza? Or is it more about basically shoring up his own political sport at home and possibly even only in his own constituency in Islington?
Well, look, he's perhaps not the brightest leader Labour has ever had, but he's also not the stupidest. I suppose that would be Jeremy Corbyn. He's got the intellect to work out that his package incentivises Hamas to continue the war and continue starving the Palestinians. He's got to have known that. But I think his greater concern was his own base. If you look at the figures within Labour who are pushing for this, they largely have very big Muslim demographics in their own constituencies. Shabal Mahmood, 45% in Birmingham Ladywell, West Streeting about 23% Muslim population in Ilford North. They're pushing for this because they're worried that their vote is going to be hemorrhaged to the Gaza Independents or to Jeremy Corbyn and Zara Sultana's party. So Keir Starmer, regretfully, is placing the Middle East in greater jeopardy with further bloodshed to come for the sake of his own political advantage at home. It's absolutely disgraceful.
But the interesting thing is, of course, those people on the left and the very pro-Gaza people among the Muslim so-called community leaders, they will say this is not enough. So he won't please them either.
Well, exactly. I mean, they always want him to go further. He's between two stools. He's not far left enough for the far left, and he's not sensible enough for the sensible voter in the country. And so, really, he's trying to triangulate in a totally inept way, as usual with Keir Starmer. This is the man who supported Jeremy Corbyn, tried to get him into number 10 back in 2019. Suddenly he turned against him. He's got no principles at all. He's only driven by political expediency. We see through him, and hopefully he'll be gone in the next election.
Thank you very much for joining us. Jake Wallace-Simons, author of Israelophobia. I cannot recommend that book enough. A columnist, obviously, the Telegraph. Claire Pearsall, he shares, I think, our concern about this. But, this is one of the things, I think one of the things people are crying out for, with whatever your views are on Israel goals. And people have lots of different views. I mean, I personally think there's only one moral view. I really do. There are certain things where I go, Brexit, Remain, oh, absolutely. Labour, Tory, well, yeah, I completely see, lots of different political things that you can have. I think there are two very clear arguments on abortion, on capital punishment, on lots of big issues. The Israel Gaza thing, I think is just so clear cut and moral. Same with Russia and Ukraine. I'm amazed that anyone takes another position. But happy to hear from you if you do feel a different view, because I'm happy to take you on. 0344 499 1000 is, as you know, the number to call. We'll take your calls up next. But it's the fact that Keir Starmer doesn't seem to believe in anything at all. No. I can think of nothing that he feels strongly, but he will change his position just like, with a little gust of wind.
He's one of those that you couldn't put him in a pigeonhole. You couldn't say, whether you agreed or not, Jeremy Corbyn had a philosophy to him. Tony Blair had a philosophy, whether you agree with it. So did Margaret Thatcher, and so did David Cameron. And then it all gets a bit woolly after that. And Keir Starmer absolutely stands for nothing. Yeah,
it is very, very strange that you want to go into politics when you don't have any particular... And he stood as, sort of being on the left when he was running for the leadership, and then sort of moved right for the election, and then goes left, goes right, goes left. And again, the fact that he has backtracked, I think he's done 2 U-turns, so I don't know where that leaves us in terms of a double negative on his Island of Strangers speech. He said the Island of Strangers speech, then he said he didn't read his... He regretted saying it because he hadn't read his speech, and then he regretted saying he'd regretted it. I mean...
Just makes it worse every single time he opens his mouth.
Do you say things you don't mean?
No. I generally stand by what comes out of my mouth.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. Absolutely. Anyway, before we go to a quick break, I've got some good news for you. We had that Oasis competition. Yeah, I mean, seriously, we were all entering it. I wasn't going to pay 350 quid for a ticket. That's what we got down to. Now it's Coldplay also playing a string of concerts this year. Coldplay are back at Wembley this summer, and we've got a huge VIP prize up for grabs for one lucky listener. We're giving you the chance to win 6 tickets look, you've just got 4 friends. Hiya. Hi. 6 tickets in a private box for you and your mates on August the 22nd with full hospitality, plus we are chucking in 10 grand spending money completely tax-free. Here's everything you need to know.
10k for Coldplay. Play 10k cash for Coldplay with 10 grand in your hand tax-free, plus 6 super hot tickets to witness Coldplay's sold-out Music of the Spheres tour from a VIP box at Wembley Stadium on August 22nd. Tickets, top tunes and 10 grand cash. Don't panic. Enter to play 10k for Coldplay at talksport.com/win and get ready for the feel-good gig of the summer for you and 5 mates. 10k for Coldplay is a joint TalkSport Limited competition run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio. See talksport.com for terms and conditions.
10k cash for Coldplay.
18 plus UK excluding Northern Ireland. For a chance to win, text the word Wembley to 83338 by the 4th of August at 11 p.m. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. You must have the bill payer's permission or send your name and number by post to Coldplay Competition, PO Box 3190, Colchester CO2 8GP, to arrive by 5 p.m. on the 7th of August. This is a TalkSport Limited promotion run on TalkSport, Talk and Virgin Radio UK stations. Full T's and C's at talksport.com/win.
Oh, I'm worn out after that. Good luck with that, though, guys. 11:37 is the time. We'll go to a quick break. Up next, going to take your calls. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. Thanks so much for joining me. 0344 499 1000. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer, and you are on the phone line. So Caroline is in London and wants to have her say. A very good morning to you, Caroline.
Oh, Julia, it's amazing that I finally got through to you. Please bear with me.
Yeah.
Everything you've said this morning and on Mike Graham's show is coming out of my mouth. Totally agree. But what I'm finding abhorrent, I mean, what this Prime Minister's done, I don't have any more. I can't add to anything that's been said and what that correspondent said. And I also watched the video of the journalist in Gaza taking photos of all the food just sitting there. Yeah. We know about it, but the masses don't.
They really don't.
And this is what I find scary, not just about this, but they're blocking everything now. So so the masses are not going to know anything about the migrant hotels, nothing. And this is terrifying. And, you know, everyone I speak to, nearly everyone I speak to, all they talk about is the, you know, the destruction of Gaza and all the gaslighting. And I'm genuinely cannot see this country coming back from this. And what I wanted to also add is, by what Starmer said, he is now putting this country in danger. He's giving Hamas permission to basically have free reign in the UK. That's what he's giving.
Well, that's basically what Netanyahu is saying. You know, they're on our borders right now, but they are fighting an existential battle against Islamofascism, and they're fighting it on Western civilization's behalf. I'm amazed how many people just don't get it.
Well, this is my worry. Now, everyone who's on Talk, they're all on the same page. But what about all the millions that aren't on Talk? They're on Sky News, BBC.
Yeah,
BBC
I know.
The other day, all they had on there was Gaza. Not anything about the protests and ethics, nothing.
But also, it's interesting. We spoke to Andrew Fox, you know, who's a former military man, defence expert, and he was out. He's in Israel yesterday, but he'd been out in Gaza the second time with the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, and he's very open. Yeah, there has been a hunger problem. That's there now, dealing with it again. So, you know, he doesn't sit there going, no, nothing's happening. But he pointed out that there's been aid in northern Gaza this whole time. Now, I didn't know that. I followed this story very, very closely. That has not been on the news.
Well, exactly. And the thing is, the world now is against Israel. The world now is anti-Semitic. That's what's happening.
It is.
I mean, what's the end of this, Julia? I'm Jewish. My mum survived the Holocaust. I'm not religious at all. But when October the 7th happened, that really changed my whole view of everything.
And again, people wonder why Jewish people need their own state. Well, you know, given how many Jewish people I know in London who are talking about leaving this country because they no longer feel safe, that's why people feel they need a Jewish state.
Yeah, but not only that, they're coming for every white person.
Of course they are. They're coming for everyone who's not an Islamofascist. I mean, you know.
So how do we get this out? How do we get this out to the masses? This is my thing I keep thinking.
Oh no, we're going to wait. We're going to wait for the next major terror attack, and then we're going to be told, oh, whatever you do, we mustn't have any Islamophobia as a result of this, and we need to not look back in anger. We need to light a candle and have some prayers, and then we'll learn our lessons. But that's the reality. Is we're just going to wait for it to come to our shores, which is what it is. That's what they're doing. That's what some of the people arriving on those dinghies are doing. Can I just read you something, Karen, before I let you go? Emily Damari, you know, the British-Israeli woman, of course, and she was held hostage by Hamas more than a year. She said that Keir Starmer is not standing on the right side of history after his pledge to recognise the Palestinian state. She said the PM had he been in power during World War II, would he have advocated recognition for Nazi control of occupied countries like Holland, France or Poland? She says this is not diplomacy, it is a moral failure. Shame on you, Prime Minister. And she says, as a dual British-Israeli citizen who survived 471 days in Hamas captivity, I'm deeply saddened by Prime Minister Starmer's decision to recognise Palestinian statehood. And bearing in mind, she spent quite some months of that time, not just in a Hamas tunnel, but in a cage, a 2-metre by 2-metre cage with 5 other people. That's how she was being treated, like she was an animal by those Hamas terrorists. You can kind of understand her perspective, can't you?
Absolutely. And no one's talking about the hostages. No one's talking about that. It's irrelevant. But where do we go with this, Julia? Because I can't sleep anymore. And I keep thinking, where can I go in the world? I've got an EU passport, but that's going from one fire pit to the other.
I want you, listen, Caroline, I want you to stay here, and I want more people who are not Jewish, like myself, to stand up and speak out and say this is not acceptable in this country. We will not have this happen in this country. I am so ashamed of what's been going on in this country, and we need to know that everybody feels safe regardless of their religion or ethnicity. Everybody.
Oh, you're right. I mean, Starmer didn't even put anything about Trump yesterday, but well, why would he? I've never seen anything so vile and pathetic in my lifetime in terms of politics.
Yeah, I know.
We need a state of emergency here. I mean, we've got no politicians with any guts, any gravitas. They're all probably against Starmer, a lot of his MPs.
Oh, yeah.
But they're too worried about their jobs. But they don't mind Britain becoming the new Islamic State in the next 15 years.
Yeah,
That's
that's the reality. Caroline, thank you so much. I really appreciate the call. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you feel that despondent. I'm so ashamed. I'm with you. I'm with Emily Demore. I'm ashamed of our Prime Minister. I'm ashamed of our country and what's happening. Steve is also on the line. He's in Chelmsford and wants to talk about this. Steve, what do you want to say?
Hello, love. I wake up every morning and I just can't believe what's happened to this country.
Yep.
I really can't. The last 10 years has been an absolute nightmare. I see something on the Facebook today about for Poland, this HSR, whatever they bloody call it, the £1 million a day they've got to pay for not having, refugees.
Oh, this is the European Union punishing them and fining them because for saying, no, we're not taking anyone. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, just don't pay it. That's a dar, isn't it? I mean, that's so easy. Do you know what I mean? We should do this. We should do that.
Well, we're not in the EU. We don't have to take any of these people. I mean, Keir Starmer's desperate to sign us back out.
What I'm saying is that the HS, what they called it? I don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Human rights people.
Oh, them. Yeah.
Just whatever they're going to do to us, then they can do it.
You mean the European Court of Human Rights?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's an EU. That's an EU ruling. That one. Again, we look again. The idea that we can't, stop the dinghies, we can't stop the Tsunami, all of that. But your concern is so the Prime Minister's dealing, making these, doing this gesture politics, but he's not dealing with stuff back home.
Yeah, Julia, can I just say?
Yep.
I honestly think, right, every time I look at Starmer, I honestly think there's something wrong with him.
What way?
I think he needs to go and sit in a dark room with a psychiatrist and say to him, you're not going to win the next election by all the crap that you're doing in this country.
Yeah, but perhaps, Donald Trump gave him some advice, didn't he? I don't think he's going to listen to any of it, Steve. I appreciate that. Apologies for the language there. Claire Pearsall, I mean, again, I think Keir Starmer probably does sit in a darkened room rocking backwards and forwards quite a lot of the time. No, maybe he doesn't because actually he's a man with a very high opinion of himself. And though he's actually a little bit, if you look at his actual, I know he's Director of Public Prosecutions, and he's now Prime Minister, but weirdly he's a kind of a little bit of an also-ran. It's kind of a matter of luck.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely is. And I think that Emily Demare summed it up by saying it is a moral failure of him. And he likes to think he's all about the morals, doesn't he?
Doesn't he?
And I think that is the most damning thing.
Absolutely. 11:47 is time. Up next, I'm going to talk about, problems back here. Maybe the Prime Minister might want to care about some of these things sometimes. Lawless London and those Rotherham gang victims who went to the police and then were abused by police officers. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
absolutely right, Peter. It's an absolute disgrace. We've had the work. We thought it was bad enough when police officers were not investigating these things, when alleged community leaders could stop things, and we were told that not investigating grooming gangs was some kind of social cohesion. And now it's stepped into even more worse ground, that three officers have been arrested, retired officers. And I agree with you, and I agree with Professor Jay, who did the report into Rotherham in 2014.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 11:50 is the time. Let's turn our attention right now to what's going on back here in Britain. I don't think the Prime Minister really spends much time worrying about it. I'm not even sure that the London Mayor cares much about what happens in our capital city, but he probably should, because the latest stats have shown outrageously that knife crime offences in London have nearly doubled, up by 86% in just a decade, the entire time under which Sadiq Khan has been London Mayor. And also that only 1 in 20 muggings in London last year were actually solved by the police. I'm amazed it's as high as 1 in 20, given they don't actually turn up or try to actually investigate any crimes. But let's talk about this with Danny Shaw. He's a Home Affairs commentator and a former advisor to Yvette Cooper before she became Home Secretary. Very good morning to you, Danny.
Hello, Julia. Nice to be here.
Nice to talk to you. I mean, I have to say, I wish it was under happier circumstances. These stats are absolutely staggering, and yet not remotely a surprise or a shock to anyone who's lived in or been into our capital city in the last 10 years.
Yeah, these figures are contained in a very good report from David Spencer from Policy Exchange, the think tank. David Spencer's a former detective in the Metropolitan Police. And what he's really highlighted is the fact that knife crime is concentrated particularly in London. About a third of knife crime offences across England and Wales are in the capital. And in London, it's concentrated in particular areas. And it's also driven by robberies, and robberies are driven by thefts in particular, of mobile phones. So if you kind of focus the problem in the areas where it's worst, and you try and stop people committing crimes in those areas, and then you focus on robbery and mobile phones, you might actually begin to tackle the problem.
Yeah.
And
but they
that's
don't.
really the key to his report.
But the police don't, and this is the thing. I mean, Mike Graham had his phone stolen. It was extraordinary. He was talking about how his phone was stolen just out of his hand, and then a police officer happened to be driving by and said, "Oh yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah, I had mine stolen the other day," and he was in uniform when it happened. That's how flagrant this is. Often they're on the e-bikes, e-scooters. They can grab, masked. They're off. No one does anything about it. But the number of people I know who've had their mobile phone stolen, where they've got it, Find My Phone, they've got it tagged, and they can actually follow the person to where it is. They can say, my phone, I can show you, my phone is inside that house. I've seen the bloke coming in now. I see what he looks like. He looks like the bloke who stole my phone. And the police say, there's nothing we can do.
Well, there's a couple of very good ideas that this report contains. One, firstly, is for the government to legislate so that the phone companies are required to ensure that the phones can no longer connect to cloud services once they've been stolen. There is a technical fix to this problem. It cannot be beyond the wit of these global tech companies.
Because often they're sent abroad, aren't they?
To provide a disincentive for the thieves to steal phones. They're stealing them because there's a market for them. There's a market for the devices and for the parts, a lucrative market. Some in the
but hold on a minute, every high street,
kill the market. You kill the
every single high street has got a little store on it, probably about 5 or 6 next to all the Turkish barbers, saying unlock your phone. We can unlock your phone for I thought the whole point was if a phone was locked, someone couldn't access it.
Yeah, look, you can get round these things. Of course, you can get round, these issues. But if you look at car theft, for example, Julia, which has plunged since the mid-1990s, why has it fallen? It's fallen because it's harder to steal cars and take them away, and there's obviously less stuff in cars that is stealable or that is worth stealing. But because of the technical solutions from the from the car industry. We need to do the same for the phone industry. The other...
Well, wait a minute, though. Won't they just move on to the next thing? They'll find something to steal. They just move on to the next thing. I'm all in favour of the tech solutions, but we could also... I know this is a mad idea. I don't want to sound old-fashioned. We could actually arrest and prosecute and imprison some of the people stealing phones, because my guess is that each phone isn't stolen by someone new each time. Like, I've just decided out of the blue after I've gone and done my 40-hour weeks at work, paid my rent, I'm a law-abiding citizen, but now I'm going to steal a phone. It's the same group of people who are stealing all the phones. We just put them away behind bars, and then there won't be people stealing phones.
Yeah, well, the other issue, that's prevention. The other issue is arrest, which means you need more stop and search powers, particularly in the areas where knife crime and robberies are concentrated. There's an area around the West End of London, around Oxford Circus, where there are so many robberies and knife crimes perpetrated. You need more of a police presence there. And the other thing is you need to use the existing laws which allow imprisonment, immediate imprisonment for repeat offenders in terms of knife crime.
Yeah, but they have to go to court.
Not being used enough at the moment.
They have to go to court. Again, first of all, the police actually have to investigate to actually find them. And you know as well as I do that the police refuse to investigate. They often say, oh, we've closed this case because there's no evidence. They don't seek out the evidence. They just literally don't seek out the evidence. When my bag was stolen, I had to provide all of the evidence myself.
Well, there needs to be a change in approach from the Met Police.
They haven't got the resources. They're too busy policing Twitter.
Well, look, you can redirect some resources, but you can also, through good leadership and effective leadership, demand that officers on the ground take this really seriously, particularly if you focus your efforts on the areas that are worst affected.
My understanding is that an officer makes an arrest. They have to spend it takes 12 hours for them to process everything. So they don't want to make an arrest because then they're off the street.
And the police station is often the other end of the town or the city as well, which also takes them off the streets. Those are real problems which can't be addressed overnight, but you can make some inroads, at least by focusing on the repeat offenders, the prolific criminals, because that will actually reduce crime in great proportions.
And crucially, this is something that, I don't know, the London Mayor, the Police and Crime Commissioner, who is that? Oh, Sadiq Khan, the same person in both cases. This is something that he could perhaps prioritise, given that it is a huge issue, both knife crime and phone theft, huge issue for people in this city. And again, it's a big issue for people who come to London.
Yeah, of course it is. I mean, and the other point, and I think this is a really important point that is made by the report, is the claim that black people are disproportionately stopped and searched. There are disparities in stop and search. Black people are around 3 times more likely than white people to be stopped and searched in London. But as this report points out, they're also disproportionately represented in terms of victims of stabbings and of violent crime, and they're more likely to be suspects for murder and for robbery suspects. So I think this is a crucial report, and I would urge people to look at it and read it, because it provides a roadmap for the future in terms of ramping up stop and search.
Just finally, and I've left too little time, so I do apologise, but we've also got these claims that for a number of victims, Rotherham grooming gang, saying that when they went to the police, it was police officers who then raped them. One being told, basically, if you report me, I'm just going to return you to the grooming gangs. A girl, from the age of 12 who was routinely raped and abused by a police officer. This isn't a surprise. You've been following these stories for a long time as well. We know that lots of girls faced made allegations over the years about this, but this is a shocking claim that needs to be investigated, isn't it?
Well, the concern, Julia, is that there is an investigation at the moment, but the investigation is led by South Yorkshire Police, which is the very force in whose officers are subject to these allegations of rape and sexual abuse by the victims of the grooming gangs. So it would seem to me that even though that investigation is, from a different team, and I'm sure those officers are very committed and they're being overseen by an independent body, the IOPC, I think that it is time to remove that investigation from South Yorkshire Police and place it into another police force that's unconnected with the grooming gang scandal.
Absolutely. Danny Shaw, great to speak to you. Home Affairs commentator Danny Shaw there. Claire Pearson, I'm sure you would agree with that as someone who worked at the Home Office. And again, this comes back to the whole, let's have these little mini investigations, local councils, when actually a lot of the allegations were made against local councils failing to act on the grooming gangs.
And they shouldn't be allowed to mark their own homework ever. It should be given to someone who's far removed from it.
Who would you trust, though? And I trust Maggie Oliver to do it.
I was going to say, other than Maggie Oliver, I'm coming up with a very, very short list of people. It's very, very difficult because I think there are so many people who are culpable in all of this.
And whose interest it would be to protect their mates, their colleagues, you know, again, and the pressure. They might be good people, but they come under pressure from above.
And
this is just another one of those breaking point things. The British people say, no, enough already, we need this dealt with. And the Prime Minister thinks it's going to go away. It's not going to go away because more and more of these stories are going to keep coming out. Up next, we are going to take the news. Then we're going to be talking to former Defence Minister Tobias Ellwood. He welcomes what the Prime Minister has had to say on Israel. We'll talk about that next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very good afternoon to you. Welcome back to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. I think you've been noticing that the last few hours. Indeed, on Mike's show as well, after that absurd announcement from the British Prime Minister yesterday regarding Gaza and Israel. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your Connect device, it would be great to have your company and great also to hear from you. In terms of particularly Israel and the US accusing Keir Starmer of rewarding Hamas after he announced his plan to recognise a Palestinian state with conditions on Israel, but not on Hamas. Because that seems sensible, doesn't it? I'd love to hear your reaction to that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. You can text the word TALK in your message to 87222. You can follow us and message us on X at Talk TV. Text cost one standard network rate message, and calls are charged at the national rate. Joining me throughout the show, and still until the next hour, is Claire Pearson, former Conservative government advisor. We're hearing lots of sense from her as well. Again, on this issue, of Keir Starmer basically rewarding Hamas, announcing a plan to recognise a Palestinian state that will almost certainly happen in September ahead of the United Nations next General Assembly, unless Israel meets a series of conditions, including ending what he called the appalling situation in Gaza, but no conditions on Hamas to release the hostages, lay down their arms or the like. Netanyahu said the decision not only rewards Hamas's monstrous terrorism, but also punishes its victims. I do desperately want to hear your thoughts on that. We're going to talk to Tobias Ellwood in just a couple of moments on that. I do think this is one of those issues, Claire, which is just such a clear-cut moral issue here. Like, are you on the side of the democratic nation-state run by a government that is a coalition government that not many people in Israel even support that much, but is nevertheless fighting an existential battle against Islamofascism? Or do you support the Islamofascists in Hamas who are quite happy and actually want their own people, their own children to die, to push forward their cause? Their cause not being the Palestinian people, but their cause being wanting to kill every Jew on this planet, to take over Israel, from the river to the sea, and then to come for the West as well. Why don't people get that?
Because they don't want to. For a lot of people, it's happening very far away and it's very, very complicated. And then there are an awful lot of people who think that Israel are always going to be the bad guys and they are never going to think any different. So they're always going to err on the side of caution and go with the terrorists, which I find a bizarre thing for anybody to do in their right minds. And Keir Starmer has laid down absolutely no real incentive to Hamas to stop killing people. There is no sanctions put upon them if they don't behave. It all happens to be piled up on Israel, who are a democratic nation, who are one of our strongest allies and absolutely need our respect and support.
Yeah, and my question always is like, what would be a proportional reaction to October the 7th? Because I'll tell you what I would expect our government to do if such an event had happened in our country, and proportional be out the window is all I can say. Right, well, let's talk to my next guest about this. And I really want to hear your thoughts, love to hear your reaction to what he has to say. Tobias Ellwood joins us, a former Conservative former Conservative MP, former Defence and Foreign Minister as well, and joins us. A very good afternoon to you, Tobias.
Good afternoon to you.
I feel it's going to start well and it's going to go badly, this interview, because I understand that you are of the view that actually this is the right announcement from the British Prime Minister and that this is the right time. He always said, it was in the Labour manifesto, wasn't it? A long-time Labour position of recognising a Palestinian state, but he said previously he wanted to wait until it was the right moment. He said yesterday even waiting for maximum impact, talking about doing this ahead of the General Assembly meeting of the United Nations in this September. But in putting conditions on Israel about humanitarian aid to Gaza, about a ceasefire and about their actions, but at no point putting the same conditions on Hamas, release the hostages, lay down their weapons, agree to a ceasefire, which ceasefire, by the way, they just rejected. Why do you think that this is the right move by the Prime Minister?
I'm going to give you my view. I'm not going to say whether I disagree or agree with the Prime Minister. Can I give you my view? And this interview doesn't need to go to a bad place, as you perhaps suggest. I hope you give me a little bit of latitude to explain my position, which is different from the Prime Minister's, because your discussion there all focused around somehow rewarding Hamas or somehow supporting Hamas. Hamas has lost any right to govern Gaza, to govern the people of Gaza, given what it did on the 7th of October. As former Middle East minister, I promoted the position that recognition of Palestine that can only be used once needed to be part of an act to help the objective of securing that two-state solution based on 1967 borders. Otherwise, it's mere symbolism. But what we see play out today, the calculus has changed. As Israel pursues its absolute right to take on Hamas, destroy Hamas after those barbaric attacks. But in doing so, it's doing it without any absence of a strategy to convert military success on the battlefield towards stability, to isolating Hamas politically and leading us to a two-state solution, let alone a ceasefire. I'll go further. While the international community, including neighboring Arab states that are willing to help with the rebuilding, still seek a two-state solution, Prime Minister Netanyahu himself is not interested. Indeed, his actions with building more illegal settlements in the West Bank and blasting the Gaza Strip are leading to this humanitarian crisis that we're seeing play out today. So this wider discussion of recognition is not just a reminder of that long-term objective and how close we are to losing it as an outcome, but this argument that recognition helps Hamas is just completely false. Hamas does not recognize Israel, let alone a two-state solution. So this recognition could be used to isolate Hamas. The Gazan people see Hamas then as the blocker to peace. And I go back to that point. Who will help rebuild Gaza in practice? It'll be the United Arab Emirates, Saudi, Egypt, Jordan, and Bahrain. They want no truck with this offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. So recognition can actually not only help isolate Hamas, but also neutralize Iran's case against Israel and therefore its support for the proxies. So I would argue recognition can play a strategic role. And if you're saying not now, then when? Because the window to secure that two-state solution, I'm afraid, is closing.
OK. Right, you've made all those points. I don't think that isolating Hamas, bearing in mind that, you know, Hamas and the sort of Fatah supported Palestinian Authority loathe and despise each other. You know, Hamas is already isolated, other than the fact they've got all the, you know, thousands on the streets of London every 2 weeks supporting them in every university campus in America and Britain. They couldn't give two hoots what Britain says, other than the fact we've just secured a little propaganda coup for them. They're not going to change their mind. They're not going to lay down their weapons. They're not going to go, oh, we did want to kill every single Jewish person and destroy the state of Israel, but oh, now we see the error of our ways. They're not going to change their minds. This isn't going to make a blind bit of difference. They're Islamic jihadist lunatics. The only answer to that, I'm afraid, is for them all to be dead.
Fine, and I don't disagree with any of that. You then have to ask yourself what replaces Hamas. And I go back to the point, what is the Netanyahu, not Israeli, because you've actually got military personnel distancing themselves from the war that's unfolding here, because it's absent of converting those battlefield successes into any form of strategy. Hamas is actually on the back foot, as is Iran. There is an opportunity to move this forward, but we see no plan whatsoever. And potentially recognition, it is symbolic, you're right, could help reverse this current trajectory. But you and I will agree, Hamas has no right to participate in the long-term governance of Gaza. And if you speak, as I've done, I was in touch with some of the Arab ambassadors this morning, they 100% agree with that.
But it doesn't matter. But so what? So what? They don't have a right. They've not been. They were elected in 2005 or whatever it was, 2006. They've not had an election since. But who does have a right? Oh, the Palestinian Authority. Oh, well, they haven't held an election for 20 years either. We call them the moderates. They're not moderate by any Western notion of They're not the liberal sodding Democrats. They are an extremist Islamo-fascist organisation as well. They're just not quite as extreme as Hamas.
So you then go back a step and say, what would be the technocratic setup that could be brought in by those Abrahamic Accord signatories that could actually help the Palestinians, ordinary Palestinians, the 2 million people that do not want any truck with Hamas themselves, knowing where this is taken.
How do you know that? Because on October the 7th, when young women bleeding, having blood all over them, with with broken limbs or some even dead, when they were being paraded on trucks through the streets of Gaza, ordinary, innocent civilian Palestinians, men, women, children, were happily shouting, spitting on them, cheering with joy at what happened. We saw the celebrations. Now, I'm quite happy to accept that not everybody in Gaza feels that way, but given the propaganda they are taught in their schools, given the attitudes that they are being raised with, there is no reason to believe that these people are not, as a majority, in favour of Hamas, their rulers.
I don't think you can speak for the 2 million people.
But neither can you. Well, you just did.
I just said that.
But you just said that you thought, the 2 million people who don't support, ordinary civilians. We don't know how many of them are sane and ordinary people who don't want to kill every Jew they get an opportunity to kill.
Let's keep this conversation going in the direction that can be helpful, because you can't speak for them and neither can I. What I can say, though, is that there isn't an alternative right now from other than Hamas, because it's not presented to the Palestinian people. At the moment, all they see is more war. The region simply sees more war. And the bigger question for us and the international community is to say, is the current strategy taking us to that two-state solution, which you, I think, started off by saying, yes, you want to see?
No, I don't know. No, I'm not entirely sure a two-state solution is even an option. The two-state solution has been offered again and again. It has been rejected every single time. The bodies that actually represent the Palestinian people or claim to, none of them actually support a two-state solution. What they want is a one-state solution, and that one state is annihilating Israel and taking Israel's land. That's not an option.
Look where that takes us.
Well, I know.
Your view is not the position of the British government, indeed is not the view of even the Americans.
But good luck with that.
The official position has been for many, many years, but we've not got there. And as I say, that
why
window
haven't we got
closing. That window is closing of a two-state solution, and it's closing for a number of reasons. But one of them, I have to say, is down to Prime Minister Netanyahu himself, that does not want to pursue this because he realizes, for many reasons which are actual personal, that more war suits him. Now, I simply say, for the moment, Hamas is actually on the back foot. There is nothing else is being currently offered to the Palestinian people as something as an alternative. You've got rich countries, Arab countries, wanting to move this forward, wanting stability itself. So to move this forward, you have to ask yourself, can we craft a more cognitive strategy rather than just the status quo, which I think is what you're currently arguing for, which will lead Iran to continue funding Hamas in this way.
No, I don't want the status quo. I want Israel. No, I want Israel. I want the only democratic state in the Middle East to win over the terrorists. I'd be perfectly happy with it. It's not my land. I'd be perfectly happy if they could negotiate a two-state solution. But I think it's a perfectly, and I accept your point that Netanyahu wants to stay in power. War suits him in terms of his own political situation and the corruption charges.
I'm glad you said that because it's important to say.
I'm not a mouthpiece for the Israeli government. I never have been. However, Netanyahu is someone who's also, like every young Israeli in their youth, fought in the military, and he understands the reality that if you do set up a Palestinian state on Israel's border, a Palestinian state that is committed to the annihilation of Israel, is not in Israel's interest. And we wouldn't agree, if we were in the same circumstance, we would be insane to agree to that as well. When you say we should offer an alternative to the people of Gaza.
You're putting a false argument down, I'm afraid, which is the fact that somehow we are assuming that because this discussion of a two-state solution has come up, as I say, something perhaps to nudge a focus on where we should be going, it's somehow inherent that Hamas will stay in power. Now, you sort of implied that's what the Prime Minister wants as well. I absolutely distanced myself from the very start. When we had the debate in Parliament, I was one of the very first that said, actions on the 7th of October remove Hamas's any right.
They never had a right to be in power. That wasn't the first act of terrorism they'd carried out.
No, but you yourself said that they were elected into power. What I'm trying to say is, where is the strategy to craft a more secular governance? With the support of
Tobias,
Arab nations. That's where the money will come from.
Maybe if Qatar stopped
to support that.
Yeah, maybe if Qatar stopped letting the leaders of Hamas live, in their beautiful, billionaire mansions, then perhaps that actually put some pressure on them. That'd be good. But we have seen, haven't we not, some leading Middle East nations like Saudi and others actually speaking out and calling on Hamas to down weapons.
Exactly, which is why Hamas cannot participate in any governance in the future. And you need to leverage that.
Yeah, but here's the thing, Tobias. Tobias, if you think
Saudi is asking for as well.
You're an ex-military man. You know as well as I do, Hamas is a terrorist organisation. I'm not going to go, oh, well, in that case, no one likes us anymore. I think we'll give up our weapons. The only reason why Hamas will vacate the Gaza and stop having the power they have will be when they are destroyed by the Israelis. They are doing a service for the entire region and the Palestinian people and the West in destroying Hamas. And they need to get every last Hamas
Please let me get a word in edgeways. Please let me get a word in edgeways to finesse what you are saying, because you cannot defeat an ideology by military means alone. And until we figure that out, then all the bombs that drop on Gaza, causing it to be absolutely destroyed, will not defeat
Why did we fight
ideology.
ISIS? Why did we fight ISIS? Why did we bother? Why didn't we just leave them?
No, you're missing my point.
I'm not
Please
missing your
listen to me.
point.
My point is that you need a political strategy. Did we not learn anything in Northern Ireland or Afghanistan or indeed with Hezbollah? When were they created? Decades ago, after Israel invaded Lebanon, and they still exist today.
Do you know why? Do you know why we have peace in Northern Ireland, Tobias? We have peace in Northern Ireland because the Americans stopped funding the IRA.
You're making my case for me. A political solution, which meant that the IRA became unpopular because the people of Northern Ireland wanted peace.
The people of Northern Ireland have not been radicalised in the same way the people of Gaza have been radicalised.
The insurgency will continue unless the majority of people say, I don't want to support it. And that's the same the world over when you're dealing with an ideology. And at the moment, this is, I hope we can agree on, this is what Netanyahu has no interest in doing whatsoever.
No, I think Netanyahu, he's got his own personal interests. I completely accept all of those. I've made that point. However, the Israeli government as a whole has an interest in protecting the Israeli people, the state of Israel. They're in an existential battle, and Hamas need to be destroyed. And any government policy that doesn't involve not just the ousting of Hamas, but the just complete destruction of Hamas, isn't paying attention to the real world.
So what you and I are actually saying is actually not too far apart.
I think it is.
The difference is that, well, if I can finish my sentence, the difference is to do with the political approach, the strategy that then yields, that it takes advantage of your military successes on the battlefield and takes it a step forward. And the concern I have is when you may not argue, but many people have, including all sides in Parliament, that we want a two-state solution. The window for a two-state solution is closing. It's closing because of what's going on with illegal settlements in the West Bank, and it's closing because of what's happening in Gaza at the moment. And if we are serious about a two-state solution, which you've now declared that you're not interested in, then that's what we need to rekindle, a sense of purpose as to where all this leads. And at the moment, I do not see a strategy in relation to what you want to do, which is the status quo. That will lead to
Tobias, you're completely mischaracterising what I've said. I'm all in favour of a two-state solution.
You said you were against a two-state solution.
No, I didn't. I've said no. I'm perfectly in favour of there being a two-state solution.
Right, forgive me, that's what I understood.
If the Palestinian authorities, anyone who's involved in claiming authority over the Palestinian people and likely to claim authority over a Palestinian state such as it could ever exist, I don't think it'll happen in my lifetime. If they renounce the destruction of Israel and the murder of the mass extermination of Jewish people, which I'm not seeing coming, but I think that should be a prerequisite of being allowed to have a state. I think that would be a bare minimum request, no?
Well, I don't disagree with any of that. The trouble is,
well, then it's not going to happen.
Now repeated 3 times, is that you've got a prime minister that is deliberately moving the agenda the other way to close down even any option of having a two-state solution. That is why I have then said, let's use the card now to reaffirm what our long-term objective is. What I'm not spending any discussion on is what would be the actual technocratic capability to run Gaza. And for me, that is a technocratic organization made up by skill sets that are brought in from Egypt, Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. That would be plausible to the Palestinians. I hope it would be acceptable to Israel. We're not even discussing that. Let's give the Palestinians another option rather than Hamas. And I would agree with you, Fatah in the West Bank as well.
The Palestinian authorities, whether it's Fatah, Palestinian authorities, whether it's Hamas or any others, have no interest in a Palestinian state, helping the Palestinian people, preventing loss of life of Palestinian children. They have no interest in any of that. They have no interest in peace. They have no interest in a two-state solution. The only thing they're interested in is carrying on their mafia, organised, criminal, Islamo-fascist battle against the people of Israel, against Jewish people and against Western civilization. And until our politicians get to grips with what we're dealing with there and the fact that large swathes of the Middle East, the countries have actually been backing them and cheering them on and funding them, not just Iran, Qatar and the others as well. Until they get to grips with that, we're not going to be able to deal with this in the real world. I think you're all living in a fantasy land, frankly.
Well, look at Gaza today. It's been carved up by the Israeli Defense Forces because of what they're doing to try and prosecute Hamas. And they could easily now take sections of that and start, and after actually checking the populations for whether they're membership of Hamas, they've all got ID cards now anyway. You could begin the rebuilding programs today in communities. You could zone off Gaza into areas and start rebuilding it where there's a technocratic governance in charge, creating that stability, showing Palestinians that there is something beyond the war that they're currently looking at. We're not even considering that.
I'd love it if we could do that.
Come in and invest huge sums of money. Instead, we're just making it into one humanitarian disaster right now. That seems to be the current strategy. So these are practical solutions that we could lean into, which are beyond the general debate about whether or not to actually recognize Palestine or not. And we're not having that deeper conversations. As I say, the Arab states are ready to help, but Israel won't even let anybody in there, let alone take an area of southern Gaza, for example, and say, here, build communities, build a stand-alone community that can look after itself.
Yeah, well,
with responsibility given to the Arab states.
Well,
that
again,
would be my advance forward.
Wouldn't that be great? I believe 20 years ago they left them to their own devices, and we know what they did. We've got a lovely network of tunnels. They could have had a London Underground, but chose not to.
But you missed my...
No, I did know, Tobias. Tobias, I was being facetious. I understood your point. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate that debate. Thank you very much. Lots of reaction coming in from our phone callers. Tobias Ellwood, thank you. He's a former Defence Minister, former Foreign Minister, responsibility for the Middle East as well, former MP. Claire Pearsall, what do you make of that?
Well, that was a bit feisty, wasn't it? And I like Tobias, and I think he's very clever. Yeah, I think he's also wrong on quite a lot of things. The one thing he was right on...
She gave with one hand, she took away with the other.
I'm so kind. Is what replaces Hamas. And I think he's right, and that is a discussion
the European Union, by the sound of it.
Oh, can you imagine? Sort of Macron
Go
Jr.
on, as if people haven't suffered enough. Give them Ursula von der Leyen as well.
Oh, that'll be nice. We can send it there. But I think that we need to think of that. We need to look at the Palestinian Authority because they're not up to scratch. Hamas definitely not up to scratch. What replaces it? And nobody's really thought that far ahead.
Do the Palestinian people who are there want a replacement? Again, this whole idea of like, listen, I'll take children 100% innocent.
Yeah.
I've got a big question mark about most of the adults. Sorry.
And this
You're
is it.
snitching on a girl who's clearly been raped and murdered, as you said. She's paraded on a truck. I'm not sure that you maybe are up for a technocratic government, but there we are. 12:26 the time. Lots of calls coming in on this. Do give us a call. Let's have your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
You're absolutely right, Peter. It's an absolute disgrace. We've had the work. We thought it was bad enough when police officers were not investigating these things, when alleged community leaders could stop things, and we were told that not investigating grooming gangs was some kind of social cohesion. And now it's stepped into even more worse ground. That three officers have been arrested, retired officers. And I agree with you, and I agree with Professor Jay, who did the report into Rotherham in 2014.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, that got lively, didn't it? 12:28 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. I'd love to know what you made of Tobias Ellwood in my conversation. Who was talking more common sense? Let's talk to Marshall, who is in Leeds. Marshall, what do you want to say?
Well, the first answer is you were speaking more common sense, absolutely. I'm absolutely astounded that Tobias, who comes across as such an intelligent individual and an ex-military man, can sit there and say that there should be peace and there should be negotiations. As far as I'm concerned, as far as I'm aware, you need two parties to do that. Oh. And do people honestly expect the Israelis to sit down with a group who have vowed for their extermination and justify the killing of Jews globally on a daily basis?
Well, but Israel has sat down repeatedly. I mean, look, they've agreed to a ceasefire recently. It was Hamas. Qatar walked away from the table. Qatar basically, you know, like put big warm huggy arms around Hamas most of the time.
Time and time again, Julia, time and time again, Hamas have walked away, and they've changed the narrative at the last minute. What Starmer should have done yesterday, if he was doing anything, his first comment should have been, get those hostages out and get rid of Hamas. That has to be the priority. That any sane leader would have said that. I can only talk for myself as a very proud Jew. I was actually a very proud British Jew. I don't know how proud I am to be British today, I'll tell you, but I cannot understand for the life of me why Starmer would do that. He has alienated himself from, I would imagine, the majority of the Jewish community because he stabbed us in the back.
Here's the thing, though. No, but here's the thing, Marshall. The majority of the Jewish community, what, 250,000, 300,000? You've got millions of Muslims. This is a voter game. This is a voter. You've got all the lefties as well. Basically, there are more of them than there are of you. It's that simple. It is that simple. And he's going for the votes.
100% correct. And I'll give you a very little anecdote. I'm based in Leeds, and we have an amazing group of volunteers with a grassroots organisation called Leeds Against Anti-Semitism. Mm-hmm. And we have vigils every week. And we had an incident a few months ago with a national organisation where one of their representatives, who was in full uniform, gave one of our elderly ladies who was handing out a leaflet about anti-Semitism the most ridiculous abuse. And we managed to get through to the leaders and to the exec of this particular organisation. And we asked them, how many Jews do you think there are in the UK? And we got two answers, 18 million and 21 million.
What?
And you've just nailed it, 300,000. And if the Jews are running the press and running the media...
You're running the whole world.
Well, absolutely. We must be doing it very well when we've only got 300,000 in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, that's a work ethic. Come on. But that's the thing. It's the lack of knowledge people have. I am being horrified, even like people I consider, good friends but I know, I have to forgive them when their lack of knowledge on this issue, because if you're only watching the BBC, you would have a very skewed idea of the facts on this. Thank you very much, Marshall. I appreciate that call. Benji is in London. Benji, what do you want to say?
Hi, Julia. I wanted to say that I am disgusted with what Starmer said yesterday, because I think, first and foremost, it definitely sends the wrong message here. I don't know why people are trying to paint it in any way except rewarding Hamas, when Hamas are the one who have welcomed it. They said today that it shows that October 7th was worth it.
Yeah.
And
it's a bit of a giveaway, that.
Exactly. And even the Qataris and the Egyptians, who are trying to negotiate a deal, have said that since Macron's original statement, Hamas have hardened their position.
Yeah.
So, in my mind, it's counterproductive even from Starmer's own goals.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's weirdly, because as Donald Trump said of Macron, what he says doesn't matter, it's irrelevant. There's an element where it doesn't do anything to bring about a Palestinian state, doesn't do anything to bring about peace, doesn't do anything to feed children who are hungry in Gaza right now, but it does provide succour, it does provide more support for Hamas. They're winning the propaganda war, if not the actual war, and the Western media and Western populations are lapping this stuff up.
100%, and I think if Starmer wanted to do something useful, maybe he should try and encourage countries. I wouldn't support it for the UK personally, but maybe he should try and encourage other countries to take in some refugees from Gaza to actually benefit the people who are suffering there. And instead of trying to impose Israel leaving more places, like it left Gaza in 2005 and it culminated in the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. Now he's trying to do it in a much larger area next to Tel Aviv, full of mountains. I don't know what he's thinking.
That's the summary. I don't know what he's thinking. I do know what he's thinking. He's trying to save his job. He's trying to save his own seat in Islington. He's trying to pander to his left-wing backbenchers who now completely and utterly are in control of what this government does. And people thought they'd elect like another sort of Tony Blair sort of middle management guy. But this is a man who has no backbone, no morals, no conscience, nothing he believes in, nothing he actually wants to achieve. He just wanted to be Prime Minister. I genuinely, I'm so ashamed. I am so ashamed of this government. I'm not ashamed of my country. I'll never be ashamed of my country. I'm ashamed of the British government for what he's done. I really, really am. And we will live to regret it. I'm on Netanyahu's side on this thing and this thing alone, when he's very, very clear, we will be next. We will be next. That is for sure. We're going to take a quick break. Do keep your calls coming in, 0344 499 1000. We're going to be talking to James Esses up next, the founder of Just Therapy, about the NHS spending £2 million on woke nonsense, the usual International Pronouns Day, because that's apparently an actual thing, and all of that, while we still can't get doctor's appointments. That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 12:37. Claire Pissell, have you been trying? I mean, I don't want to ask personal issues. Have you or your family members tried to get a doctor's appointment lately?
Yes, no, they have. And
easy to get, no question at all, straight in?
No, incredibly difficult to get. You have to fill out some kind of online form. You may or may not get a call back, and the receptionist then may deem you not to be urgent, and you have to phone back in a couple of weeks because they can't book any.
I always love the phone back in a couple of weeks. That's always my favourite thing. I would say, no, that's not acceptable to me.
Yes,
and then I just wait and sit on there. I just wait.
You see, I would do that. I start to get really stroppy, but which is probably good for them that I don't have that many needs to go to the doctor recently.
But it is extraordinary, isn't it? We've just had just this morning the end of the 5-day doctor strike. This is the resident doctors in hospitals, and we've obviously got issues, particularly some big issues over quite how much money. Some £6,000 for a shift. Some doctors have been asking to cover emergency shifts, and the NHS chief saying, "Oh, please don't do that." But it's also emerged today. The NHS has allowed trusts to spend almost £2 million on staff networks, which have hosted a series of woke events over the past 2 years. They show they budgeted more than 1.8 million for internal staff groupings, usually linked to race, sexuality, disability, religion, or, of course, gender. And more than 154 NHS trusts who responded to a request from the Taxpayers Alliance about this. They have networks. They've hosted hundreds of events, these networks, between 2022 and 2024, including a Eurovision viewing party at Manchester University NHS Foundation, an event on embracing asexuality. That means you just don't have sex. At the Princess Alexandra Hospital NHS Trust, and also an NHS staff meeting at University College London Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust, which was a talk on embracing your afro/curly hair. And also at Barking, Havering and Redbridge University Hospitals NHS Trust, there was an International Pronouns Day event. Oh yes, and the RUH Hospital in Bath, where my mum used to work, a talk on breaking the rainbow ceiling. Let's talk about all this now, before I just lose the will to live, with James Esses. He's a psychotherapist and founder of Just Therapy. A very good afternoon to you.
Afternoon, Julia.
James, I mean, let's just start with a group sigh, because it is extraordinary. We understand there are going to be, you know, some sort of events and things that happen in hospitals at any large organisation that we may not be geared around, say, the patients or, you know, the customers, etc. But we're talking about 1.8 million quid that could have gone on paying nurses, on extra tests, on more cleaning services, more bandages, whatever it is, more MRI scans being brought forward. But instead it was spent on you know, things like breaking the rainbow ceiling and embracing your afro or curly hair. What do you make of this?
Well, as a psychotherapist, I'm quite content to diagnose the entire NHS with collective lunacy, because that's exactly what this is. And, you know, I looked at the response to the Daily Mail article on this from the NHS, and they said that they're doing all of these events to try and be inclusive. You know, it's not particularly inclusive, is it? I mean, I would love to have some curly or afro hair, but instead I've just got a slowly receding hairline. But where is the event for that? Or, you know, I don't have anything particularly exciting about myself. I'm just one of these boring, straight white men, many of whom work in the NHS. But what events are there for those? And look, I'm being slightly facetious here, but as you've noted, waiting lists are up, cancer diagnoses are on the rise, we've had strikes from junior doctors, and yet money, and not just money, but significant amount of time being devoted to running these events.
And I think that's a crucial point. When we talk about, you know, the DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, all of that stuff, it's and you've been fantastic at publicising it in not just public sector, but also in private sector, whether it's, you know, John Lewis or Wix or any other organisation. It's the effort and the time, and it's not just that those people are doing a job that serves no purpose whatsoever in terms of an output or helping people. They actually are impeding on other staff getting their jobs done.
That's precisely it. And, you know, we see also how menacing these staff networks are, because they carry a lot of clout.
Yes.
Essentially what you find is senior management within the NHS or within local councils kowtowing to these networks because they've got power in numbers, and senior management are concerned that if they're not chucking money and time at these pathetic initiatives, that they're going to be accused of transphobia or racism or something like, so it's easier for them to just give into it.
Yeah, but also when you've got organisations like Stonewall, who used to be a wonderful, you know, organisation fighting for gay rights and now are completely and utterly insane, properly insane in terms of their view. If you think that a man can become a woman or a woman can become a man because they think it, I'm sorry, you'd be diagnosed with insanity in any other decade in human existence. But they have been pushing, and for, you know, thousands of pounds fees, to the public sector, to government, to charities, to private organisations, they basically sell the Stonewall seal of approval, don't they? That you are doing the right thing. So a lot of these big companies and a lot of their HR departments, they sign off on and organisations like NHS Hospital Trust, they sign off on these events and on these things because it's a way of showing and proving that they are diverse and open and not transphobic and not racist and not anything else.
That's it. It's pure virtue signalling to the tune of millions of pounds. And it's really quite sickening to think about what that money could actually be used towards. Yes. No, it's not just a silo in the NHS. I mean, I recently put out, along with a colleague of mine, freedom of information requests to local councils across the country. And it appears that potentially dozens, if not hundreds, are in breach of the recent Supreme Court judgment on biological sex. So, for these ideologically driven organisations, it seems to be business as usual. But actually, I think that the NHS would do far better spending this money on providing many of the doctors with GCSE textbooks, because many of them still don't seem to know the difference between a man and a woman.
Yeah, we keep seeing this, don't we? It is absolutely extraordinary. And maybe also less money spent fighting employment tribunals against nurses who would rather not have to get changed into their bra and knickers in front of a man who's claiming that he's a woman but is also a doctor and therefore being protected, as we've seen the Sandy Peggy case and other cases as well. You mentioned that Supreme Court ruling, which so many people on the day, it was back in April, wasn't it, saying that this is the game changer, this changes everything. And we've seen that in certain sports, we've seen it in certain organisations, but certainly not across the board in terms of the absolute recognition that, no, you can't think that men can become women and women become men, that a trans woman, i.e. a man who identifies as a woman, has access to women's single-sex services. And we are really, really struggling to get that pushed. We're going to see a lot of legal cases before that changes. But one interesting development I've seen, which is a Brighton-based survivors network, and basically these are support sessions for women who've been sexually abused, sexually assaulted and raped. A rape crisis charity. Basically, I mean, I'll let you tell the story. Actually, you probably said it better than me. But this is basically about a woman who's identified as Sarah. Basically going along to get to a support group, and then a man turning up saying he identifies as a woman, looks very much like a man because he is a man, and action that's followed on from that. Talk us through the details.
Well, exactly that, and this anonymous individual, Sarah, found herself with a man in what was meant to be a safe space for women, and she obviously raised a complaint, and they doubled down, and then there was legal action being brought, and now it's resulted in this kind of out-of-court settlement, where essentially they've said, OK, we're going to create a brand new group which will just be for women. But, some are saying it's a bit of a win. I don't view it as that big a win, because they're still continuing to pander. Yeah. The existing mixed-sex group still remains, and so because of ambiguity around language, I still envisage women seeking out this support, finding themselves in a room with a bloke. It's a 12-month pilot. And actually, it's so nonsensical, because this new group for women only, they say that they're not allowing quote-unquote trans men who are women.
Who are women.
The whole thing's a mess.
Or non-binary. Again, no one's non-binary. But I find it extraordinary. This is the BBC article, and this. Can everyone spot the flaw in this article? So this is Sarah speaking. She said she approached the group for support after coming into contact with the man that she said had attacked her. So she'd been abused as a child, raped in her 20s. She came across this man, and it kind of triggered everything. She said, I was finding it really hard to cope. So she said she found that she went to these sessions, this rape crisis charity. She found the sessions helpful and supportive, and she said they were a safe space. However, this is the BBC. However, a trans woman, a biological male who identified as a woman, now that's a good start. They're actually pointing out that a trans woman is a biological male. Started attending the support group for victims of sexual abuse and assault. Sarah says the trans woman presented as a typical male in the way she looked and dressed. Now, no, he looked and dressed. Even in the article about this, even after that Supreme Court ruling, the BBC and numerous newspapers who should know better, the Mail, Sun, Telegraph and others who've been brilliant on this cause, still, because of ipso, still refer to men who identify as women but are quite clearly men and will always be men, born men will die men, refer to them as she and her.
Yeah, I mean, not only is it confusing and misleading, yes, but it's promoting complete and utter falsehood. It flies in the face of journalistic integrity. But, it doesn't surprise me with the BBC. I mean, I saw couple of weeks ago that the University of Sussex had awarded an honorary degree to Eddie Izzard, and the BBC article was gushing full of female pronouns as regards Eddie. So
who is a man and who used to just call himself a cross-dresser, which is what he was. He was what he would have said at the time as, his words, a tranny.
Well, quite right. But now he's Susie Izzard, and some days he's in girl mode, and some days he's not.
Well, again, I'm Julian today because I've got flat shoes as always on there when I'm in the studio. So when I'm in my flat shoes, I'm a man, because that's apparently the logic of Eddie Izzard. He'll always be Eddie and not Susie, because that is his name. James S says, you've been absolutely fantastic. I cannot implore you enough. Follow James Esses on social media. You've been such a fantastic campaigner on this, and you put your own career on the line. He's a psychotherapist and founder of Just Therapy. Claire Pearsall, this stuff drives us up the wall, doesn't it?
It does. And just when you think that you've come to the conclusion with the Supreme Court judgment, and here we are in very nearly August, and people still aren't accepting that ruling was made, and that's
well, they still
how it
don't
works.
accept things like the Tavistock. They don't accept the Cass review. They don't accept any of it. They are going to fight to the death. Again, legal.
Yeah.
You have to take that. You need accountability. I need people to lose their jobs.
Yes.
Simple as that.
It's not difficult.
It's the only thing that's going to work. Listen, by the way, before we go to a break, this news in the last 10 minutes or so, a senior Hamas official has welcomed Keir Starmer, mentioned by a caller earlier, has welcomed Keir Starmer's promise to recognise Palestine, saying, in quotes, that victory and liberation are closer than we expected. So well done, Prime Minister. We're very proud of you for helping the Hamas Islamo-fascist terrorists. Bassem Naim, who's a former minister in the Gaza government, i.e. Hamas, said international support for Palestinian self-determination shows we are moving in the right direction. So, yeah, well done. Well done. I hope you're sodding proud of yourself for aiding the terrorists, Prime Minister, on our behalf, bringing shame to our nation. How do you sleep at night? 12:49 is the time. Up next, we're going to be talking about the IMF urging the UK to make 2 interest rate cuts before the end of the year. If you've got a mortgage, you'll be looking forward to that. That's up next. This is Talk.
I think one of the difficulties is that engagement as it goes on now tends to be with so-called community leaders, and I'm not quite sure how community leaders get appointed or elected or emerge. Perhaps they just emerge in the form of the old leaders of the Tory party in the 60s. I don't know, but they seem to have a focus on things that actually don't really matter all that much to people who are losing their phones and losing their cars and losing things from their home when they're burgled.
Yeah, exactly right.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. 12:51 is the time. We're going to have a little bit of a calmer session now to talk about, the state of the economy. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Claire Pearsall still here. This is one of the big things, because over government, you left us in a state. I know you were a special advisor, not an elected official. Yes. We're still in a state. Things are getting worse, though not better. Even though I think growth was the number one. Wasn't it laser light focus on growth? Is what we were told by the Prime Minister.
Yes, it depends which Prime Minister you've been looking at, but yes, I think we inherited a really bad situation when we came in 2010.
That is fair. That is fair. Well, let's talk to Justin Arcant Stewart about this. He's an economist. He's also chairman of the Regionally Investment Platform. Very good afternoon to you, Justin. Just checking, how is that laser-like focus on growth going?
Yes, that's a cracking along. Slight short of electricity as far as I can see. There's no obvious sign of anything happening. Good news, though, we've actually got some data out that said we had some, growth. Very, very small amounts of growth. Ooh. And like all these figures, you can't just take one figure out and say, that's it, we've recovered, we're fine. You look at the long-term list of all these together, basically the economy is flat. And so we're back to the things we have to do to try and get it moving. There's nothing new about this. You don't need lots of government spending money. You need a taxation system which incentivizes people to set up businesses, invest in businesses, employ more people, get them paid, they pay tax, and that's how you actually get more money coming in.
I tell you what, you mean you don't just tax everybody and pay the train drivers more? I thought that's how you got growth.
Well, what you have to do is find the richest people possible, pay the tax them as far as you can, and see how quickly they leave the country, which is exactly what they're doing. Yeah. What you want is wealthy people here. I get so frustrated between ourselves and the Americans. The Americans congratulate you for being successful, for making money and paying your dues and all of that.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there are lots of certainly big companies, very rich, multi-billionaire companies, and the likes of like Bill Gates, people like that going, oh, I'm giving all my money away. Oh, that's lovely, but could you have paid all your taxes that would a normal company would have had to pay all those years? You might not have made quite as much money. But we are actually quite good at being entrepreneurs in this country. We're better than a lot of countries in Europe. We do actually have that entrepreneurial spirit. You know, we're a nation of shopkeepers, you know, and that thing. But then once a business becomes very successful, well, basically, you know, people slag you off for having money. Oh, we're the only, I know it's a French phrase, but we're the only country have that idea, oh, nouveau riche, oh, people have made money. I'm in awe of people who've been very successful in any area of their life. And, you know, if someone has made money from selling stuff or a service or a good that we want to buy, well done.
Yeah, and it's also one of those things I've found that when people have actually sold out of their businesses because they're retiring, and you see how much tax they've paid over the years, someone actually said, do you think anyone's actually going to send us a thank you letter saying, well, we really appreciate what you've done for us, and we want to highlight this for everyone else so they can try and do what you've been doing. Now, we've mentioned before with these high-tech centres we've got around the country, they're already there, they're successful, they're starting business, they breed, and not only that, they grow, and unfortunately the Americans buy them up. We're useless at actually just getting the right environment to encourage businesses to get to the next stage. You don't need government money for it. This is the fixation. No. This government has no idea about, well, what your sexuality is, has no idea about running a business either.
Yeah, but basically leaving people too. And we need regulations to keep people, you know, on the straight and narrow and paying their tax and some basic health and safety. I mean, things like that. And I approve the minimum wage and things, but otherwise staying out of the way. But they just want to constantly, you know, Employment Rights Act and get involved, don't they? But here's the thing. We're told, you mentioned that we are the economy is growing ever so slightly. This is the IMF, the International Monetary Fund. They do actually expect that Britain will be they want the Labour's pledge to make Britain the fastest growing economy in the G7 is in tatters. But we're not going to be the worst. Germany is going to be the worst over the next year or so. We're going to be third best. Now, I mean, when we can't be that bad if we're above Germany.
Yeah, third best in the slow bicycle race doesn't exactly mean your economy is actually throbbing away. What you need to be able to have is that vital word confidence, and you do that by actually telling people, look at the things that are going right, despite what the government do. Setting up those businesses, growing the technology, being able to make sure that actually we are making money and also paying your tax fairly as well.
Lower taxes, lower energy bills, a lot of the things that President Trump was talking about and giving advice to the Prime Minister a couple of days ago. What do you make of the International Monetary Fund saying they expect interest rates to drop, well, basically 0.5% from 4.25% right now to 3.75% by Christmas? Would you welcome that?
Absolutely, because what you've had is, unfortunately, politicians and the Bank of England also saying, well, of course, well, there's all got inflation, and unfortunately with inflation, the way we cure that is by putting up interest rates. No, it's not. It's one way of doing it. In this particular case, it's a brake on the economy. What you need to do is reduce the money, the cost of money to people, make it tax positive for companies to be investing. And you mentioned a couple of things there, the cost to businesses that the government actually is saying they've done. They've raised the minimum wage. No, they haven't. We pay the minimum wage, or the businesses do, not the government. And you see that when that sort of thing's going on. And then also, we're making sure it's not a tax on individual people. No, we're taxing companies for employing people. Brilliant. This is no way to encourage people to go out on a Monday morning saying, I'm going to make this country wealthier, and I'm going to try and do the right thing and pay my tax. And what happens? Actually, we're going to be better. It doesn't have to be made difficult. Why not actually telling us some of the better stories that are going on at the moment, despite the government, in terms of the setting up of new businesses? You quite rightly highlighted last year, just around 5,000 new businesses, lower than before, but we've had a difficult time, but still ahead of France, ahead of Germany. They were the countries that are supposed to be the ones that are winning it. The figures you just mentioned there, they're actually slowing up. And they will be getting slower.
Yeah, but that said, as we push more and more towards net zero, we're going to be getting slower too. Justin Urquhart-Stewart, it's always an absolute pleasure. And also interesting use of the word throbbing. I thought there, Claire. I very much enjoyed that. I was not expecting that one. But I mean, again, there's no wonder. I mean, it's a stat we found out yesterday that according to a survey, 1 in 4 young people are thinking about leaving the country. What a surprise.
I'm not surprised. What's to keep them here? Absolutely nothing. There's no hope for them. They don't feel they can buy a house. They can't. They can't. Coming out of university with debt, and they can't use the word megathrust, which I think is the finest.
We've had some fine words on this show: throbbing and megathrust. Megathrust refers to earthquakes, by the way. Throbbing to the economy, because I'm looking right now at a big smirk on Ian Collins' face.
And welcome to the new series of Call My Bluff.
Call My Bluff. By the way, this is the man who reduced us all to...
Throbbing comes from
you
the ancient
reduced us all
Greek...
to laughter by coming in chat of kumquats about a month ago.
Kumquats, yeah, that's right. I mean, and now we're on to throbbing. I mean, look, I don't know where to go with that, really. You give me an open goal, really.
What do you make of what the PM said about Israel? Because we've had quite a few rows on the show so far.
Well, do you know what? I try to do, and I know you try to